Star Wars. Do I really need to explain more? Ever since the original film released in 1977, Star Wars has become a worldwide cultural phenomenon, spawning everything from toys to television shows to a holiday special I'm sure no one wants to remember and a bunch of video games, among countless others of merchandise and parodies. But, as you read in the title, we're only going to be focusing on the feature films here. I know you're probably thinking, what the frick? 123 Video Game Ninja making a non-gaming video? I'm disliking this because this isn't what I subscribed for. And I don't really blame you for thinking that, but I wanted to try something different for once. If there's one medium outside video games I'm very passionate about, it's films. And considering how much I love the Star Wars franchise, I wanted to look back and review the 9 films in the mainline Skywalker Saga. And hey, maybe I could do more movie-related content in the future. As I'm only looking at the episodic titles, I won't be covering the animated Clone Wars movie, Rogue One, or Solo. But for those who want my quick thoughts, dear God. Awesome! It's okay. I'll be reviewing them in chronological order and watching the versions that are on Disney+. So, now that the intro's done, I can get on with the review. That'll probably get me into a lot of copyright issues, but hopefully everything turns out well. (1999). One of the most iconic years in film history. The Matrix, Fight Club, Toy Story 2, South Park Bitter Longer and Uncut, The Sixth Sense, and so much more coming out within this year alone. Chief among them, however, was Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. The first installment in the prequel trilogy. The first Star Wars film to hit theaters since the Return of the Jedi in 1983. One of the first to show the power of computer-generated imagery. The hype was big. People skipped school and work just to go see this movie. And what did the public think? Well, what did I think? Well, to start with a positive, the special effects are pretty damn impressive. Sure, some of the models do look like they're from an early PS3 game at this point, but for a movie that came out in 1999 when CGI was still kinda a new thing, is, again, impressive. That said, some of them do look a bit goofy, like this scene when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan use force speed to escape droidekas. The backgrounds also look really good. Oh wait, I forgot we were talking about the movie. The Trade Federation is having a blockade on Naboo over some sort of trade dispute, so the Supreme Chancellor sends in 2 Jedi Knights, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, to make things end quicker. They're almost killed.
You were right about one thing, Master. The negotiations were short.
After realizing that they plan on invading Naboo, the two stow away onto the ground to meet everyone's favorite buffoon, Jar Jar Binks, who then takes them to an underwater city so they can save the Queen and escort her to Coruscant. Okay, I know this particular criticism has already been said before, but like, goddamn, Queen Amidala has like 0 emotion whatsoever. Honestly, it feels like an actual robot is playing her. Like, take a listen.
You will not be so pleased when you hear what I have to say, Viceroy. Your trade boycott of our planet has ended.
See what I mean? She just seems perfectly fine with her home fucking planet being invaded by some bozos. On the other hand, the performances for the 2 Jedi are pretty damn good. Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor really do fit the characters well. After this whole shtick, the gang ends up on Tatooine due to not having enough power to head all the way to Coruscant. After finding the Minecraft village of Mos Espa, which apparently the set used for that is still staying out in some desert in Tunisia, they meet up with the young Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, who, along with his mother Shmi, is a slave to an oversized fly named Watto. During this time, it's shown that Anakin's building a prototype droid named C-3PO during his spare time. Qui-Gon senses he is unusually strong in the Force thanks to midi-chlorians. Oh boy. And they get into some hassles with the locals. Oh, there's also a scene where Jar Jar literally steps in shit. I get this is a kid's movie in the words of George Lucas, but was that really necessary? Honestly, the whole Tatooine sequence does kind of feel like filler here. Nothing really happens apart from the discovery of young Anakin. Padme here also sounds like a robot, but at least she has slightly more emotion. Emphasis on slightly.
What? An angel. I heard the deep space pilots talk about them. They're the most beautiful creatures in the universe. They live on the moons of Viego, I think.
You're a funny little boy.
Okay, I've gotta admit there, that was pretty wholesome. After agreeing to a gamble, Anakin proceeds to participate in the pod race, one of the most dangerous activities in the galaxy. Like, really, people actually fucking die in these. Yet the masses find this entertaining? Yeah, okay. Jabba the Hutt makes a cameo here in a hideous CGI appearance. Of course, he's only here for the gambling aspect, as he literally falls asleep during the race. The designs of the pod racing vehicles themselves do look cool, and while the pod race itself could be considered filler, at the very least, it's entertaining filler. Anakin wins the race, he's freed as a slave, his mother isn't, can we get an F in the chat fellas, and he joins the gang on their journey to Coruscant, leaving in peace. Or so they thought. Out of nowhere, a Sith Lord shows up and attacks Qui-Gon, who does manage to escape. Prior to this, the Sith were thought to be long extinct, so this will surely come as a shock to the masses. We finally end up on Coruscant, and remember how I mentioned this movie was going to get political? Well, here we are. A meeting in the Galactic Senate. It is definitely a Senate meeting, alright. The Queen pushes for a vote of no confidence towards Chancellor Valorum. Political corruption is shown, and yeah, that's kind of it there. Senator Palpatine, oh yeah, I forgot to mention he's in this movie, gets nominated for the next Chancellor. The Jedi Council refused to allow Anakin to be trained because he's older than the age of 0. Although Qui-Gon insists, as he believes him to be the prophesied chosen one, who shall bring balance to the Force. Apparently. I'm actually writing these lines while the political scenes are going on, because if there's one thing the politics of Star Wars has in common with the politics of the real world, they're both boring. I was also reminded of midi-chlorians while writing that last sentence, and now I don't know how to feel. Ian McDiarmid, I probably butchered that, someone correct me if I did, does a great job making Darth Sidious look intimidating, compared to the later movies where he's kind of goofy to watch. This movie does solidify him as a legitimate threat from the tone of his voice alone. That's how fucking good he is.
Wipe them out. All of them.
Back at Naboo, it's revealed that the Queen was actually an imposter all along, and the real Queen is Padme herself. A robot was playing decoy to another robot with slightly more emotion. The Dungeons agreed to ally with them to help defeat the droid army. This epic battle is split in multiple sections. The first has the Dungeons fighting a horde of droids on the Microsoft Windows background, while the Jedi and crew are off fighting at the palace itself. Hey, it's a level clear thing for Lego Star Wars. It's during this sequence, however, that we get led into what can be definitively hell. It's during this sequence, however, that we get led into what could be definitively agreed, even by those who hate this movie, as the best scene in this movie.
We'll handle this.
We'll take the long way.
The two come face to face with Satan himself, aka Darth Maul, who wields a double-bladed lightsaber, which alone gives him twice the badass factor and twice the riskiness of accidentally cutting himself with it. Honestly, what is there to say about this scene that hasn't already been said? The choreography is spectacular, really showing a fight with the Jedi in their prime. The music is also one of the best, if not the best, tracks in all of Star Wars. John Williams is a legend, and this track alone can prove it. You can really feel the tension in this scene, especially when the music stops for the final part of the fight. The fight comes to a conclusion with Obi-Wan gaining the high ground and slicing Maul in half, sending him falling down the shaft to die. Except he didn't really die. I forgot to mention Qui-Gon was killed in this. While all this is happening, what about young Anakin? Well, he hit a Naboo starfighter, which got sent with the other ones in space thanks to an autopilot. So yeah, a child is helping them win the fight. What are the child safety laws in the galaxy anyways? And somehow, Anakin was the one to save the day. Maybe he is the chosen one after all. The Council finally, albeit reluctantly, agrees to let Anakin be trained as a Jedi, under Obi-Wan per Qui-Gon's promise. Palpatine is elected the new Supreme Chancellor, and everything ends all fine and dandy. For now. Overall, Episode 1 was a very mixed bag for me. The movie had some very high highs, but it also had some very low lows. The action sequences and special effects were among those highs, while the focus on politics, some of the performances, and the script were among the lows. I can't say I didn't enjoy it, because I certainly did, but I am more than willing to acknowledge the flaws in this. A bumpy start to the Skywalker Saga for sure. Hopefully the next two prequels address most of these. I'm just gonna get this out of the way. This is my least favorite Star Wars movie. Fun fact, this was actually the first Star Wars movie not to top the yearly box office, being outgrossed by Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and Spider-Man. Surely there must be a reason for that, right? The opening crawl states that several solar systems have declared their intentions to leave the Republic, forming a separatist faction led by Count Dooku. Padme has stepped down from the royal throne and is now Senator of Naboo, replacing now Chancellor Palpatine, with a new hot topic in the political world being if the Republic should have an army to fight the separatists' own droid army. Landing on Coruscant only to have her ship blown up as part of an assassination attempt. Don't worry, the decoy was killed. Palpatine places her under the protection of Obi-Wan and Anakin, who is now a full Padawan played by Hayden Christensen. I probably butchered that, but oh well. But before that, we get sitting and talking. I'm guessing this will be a recurring theme for the prequels.
Annie? My goodness, you've grown.
So have you. Grown more beautiful, I mean.
Oh boy, is adrenaline heavy into the romance, huh? And man, I'm sorry Hayden, you're a great actor and all, but this just isn't your shining role. That may be due to George Lucas's direction, but oh well. That night, another assassination attempt on Padme happens. God damn, how badly did she piss these guys off? Which is thwarted by the Jedi thanks to R2-D2's alarm. The Jedi engage in a road chase with the assassin, who tries their hardest to get away. I wonder how traffic works on Coruscant, considering all the vehicles just fly around wherever, at different elevations. That would also raise into question the traffic laws of the rest of the galaxy, assuming they have any, that is. Also, the assassin's just shooting their gun at Anakin here, and no one seems to care. He does manage to crash the ship, though, leading to a ground chase into a nightclub, complete with sports screens, gambling, and girls in skimpy outfits. After catching the assassin, who is named Zam Wessel, they try to interrogate her to reveal who hired her, only to get assassinated by a bounty hunter using a toxic dart. Huh, an assassination of an assassin. Go figure. The Jedi Council assigns the two with different tasks, Obi-Wan to track down the mysterious bounty hunter as part of an investigation, and Anakin to escort Padme to Naboo. As Padme will be off-planet, she asks Jar Jar to be her representative in her absence. Surely that'll end well, right? Right? Obi-Wan heads over to Dexter's Diner, run by his old four-arm buddy Dexter Jetster, which was also the hub world in the original LEGO Star Wars game, to see if he can get any info of the dart used. So far, I failed to mention this until now, but the special effects are still pretty damn solid. There may not have been much of an improvement from Episode 1, but I already had good things to say about that aspect over there, so it's no big deal. Dex informs Obi-Wan that the dart comes from the planet of Kamino, whose inhabitants specialize in cloning. The problem is, Kamino isn't in the Republic archives at all. Yoda believes the archives were erased, something that can only be done by a Jedi.
Lost a planet, Master Obi-Wan has. How embarrassing. How embarrassing.
Obi-Wan successfully finds the elusive Kamino, with weather that us Californians can only dream of having. Most of the time. Jokes aside, I actually really love the design of Kamino. It's one of the personal highlights for me, and the soundtrack really fits the mysterious vibe it gives off. That said, the idea of a planet covered entirely by water is fucking terrifying. Obi-Wan, who was expected, meets with Prime Minister Lama Su, who has been preparing an army of clone troopers for the Republic with 200,000 members ready at this time, and 1 million more on the way. Suspiciously, the one who commissioned the army was Sifo Dyas, who died over a decade before the events of this movie. The clones were based off a bounty hunter named Jango Fett, who has also requested a single unaltered clone of himself. Obi-Wan deduces that Jango is the bounty hunter who assassinated Zam Wessel, especially since the exact armor was shown in his closet. Jango also refutes Lama Su's claim, stating he was recruited by a man named Tyrannus. Obi-Wan informs the details of his findings to Yoda and Mace Windu, who are very suspicious about this, as the clone army was not authorized by the Jedi Council. After a brief standoff, a tracking device is put on Jango's ship, which Obi-Wan uses to pursue the bounty hunter. The pursuit leads him into the Minecraft Badlands biome of Geonosis, noticing an unusually high number of Federation ships. His investigations lead him to discover a droid factory on the planet, alongside a walk-and-talk separatist leader, including former Jedi Count Dooku. While the other guys here are too goofy-looking to be intimidating, Christopher Lee manages to stand out and wants to cry with his performance. Definitely one of the better ones of the prequels. During this time, the movie also cuts back and forth with this and Anakin Padme's awkward romance. Those performances are really not helping, but at least Natalie Portman isn't a robot anymore. The two arrive on Naboo to have political discussions.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Holy shit, he said the line! It's the funny line! They have a little picnic in the grassy fields while having political discussions, oh for fuck's sake, and they slowly begin to fall in love. I don't think I've brought this up yet, but romantic attachments are forbidden in the Jedi Order. Hell, it was even alluded to in one of the teaser posters. Regardless of that and their questionable performances, seeing them bond was rather wholesome, even if a bit cringy. I was never a fan of romance films after all. This is a bit of a side tangent, but god damn, this movie really drags on. I'm writing this line while the movie's around the 55-minute mark, and not much has really happened. Anakin has a pretty bad nightmare about his mother suffering, so he decides to head to Tatooine to check on her. Padme tags along with him as she is still under his guardianship. On Tatooine, the two learn that Shmi was sold by Watto to a man named Clear Lars, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, who later married her. He shares that a band of Tusken Raiders came up to her about a month ago, leading Anakin to go out and search for her. He does find her, but she ends up dying in his arms, leading him to feel the forbidden emotion of anger, taking it out on not just the men of the Tusken Raider camp, but the women and the children too. I'm sorry, I know this scene's meant to be treated seriously, but this is ridiculous. I will admit though, playing Palpatine's leitmotif while Anakin confesses to what he did to Padme is a clever touch.
And not just the men, but the women. And the children too. They're like animals.
Oh yeah, C-3PO has been finished, so there's that. Obi-Wan contacts Anakin, who relays the message to the Council, which enough people happened to be in Palpatine's office at the time, informing them of their discoveries, including that Newt Gunray was behind the assassination attempts. Concerned that the Jedi won't be able to reach Geonosis in time, Padme flies to Geonosis herself, with a reluctant Anakin joining her. I really wonder why the Separatists chose this place to make their home base. I mean, the inhabitants are ugly. Dooku shares with the captive Obi-Wan that the Republic is under the control of a Dark Lord named Darth Sidious, which Obi-Wan doesn't believe. At the Senate, Jar Jar proposes emergency powers to Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, granted immediately. Feigning reluctance, Palpatine accepts, promising to return them once the war is over.
I love democracy. I love the Republic.
His first action is to officially greenlight the Army of the Republic to help combat the Separatists. You know, despite Jar Jar's drastically reduced role compared to Episode 1, his actions are very significant to the overarching story of the prequels, and by extension, the entire saga. Anakin and Padme end up exploring the droid factory, with C-3PO and R2-D2 following closely behind. Look, I know I complimented the special effects for this movie, but I think the ones shown in this sequence are on the flawed side. Seeing C-3PO and CGI also looks really uncanny to me, and those Geonosians aren't getting any prettier. I will compliment this scene for the tension it provides, however. Unfortunately, the two end up in captivity, which, fortunately, does lead into one of the few saving graces of this movie. Anakin and Padme, alongside Obi-Wan, end up chained in the middle of an arena, about to be victims to a public execution by three creatures: the Reek, the Acklay, and the Nexu. At least the effects on these guys are decent. Seeing Jedi forced to fight without a lightsaber is also cool. They do get cornered by several droidicas, but Mace Windu arrives to kickstart a massive Jedi battle with at least 200 others, I think, revealing themselves. Now this is my favorite scene in the movie, especially this shot of a lot of Jedi just rushing to the field of droids. Shout out to this dinosaur-looking one that fucking dies trying to take on Dooku and Jango. Shout out to this dinosaur-looking one that fucking dies trying to take on Dooku and Jango. Can we get an F in the chat for this guy, fellas? He was a good man. Fun fact, the reason Mace Windu has a purple lightsaber is because Samuel L. Jackson asked George Lucas himself. Apparently, BMF is engraved on it, which we all know what that stands for. Although I do enjoy this scene, it also shows that an army consisting of only Jedi won't work in the grand scheme of things, as they are quickly outnumbered by droids. Thankfully, Yoda arrives with a clone army, allowing them to fight back against the Separatists. Oh yeah, Jango fucking died, I forgot to mention that, whoops. All the named Jedi managed to escape so they can get proper character development in the Clone Wars TV show. Finally, we get to see the actual war part of Star Wars, and boy, it's intense alright. I'm wondering if the clones themselves were CGI as well. If so, that's super impressive. Okay, so this line wasn't in the script, the one I'm saying now, but I looked it up after, and it turns out they were all CGI. So it is pretty cool. We also get a glimpse of the Death Star plans, showing just how long Darth Sidious has been planning this thing. Seriously, why is this man obsessed with planet-destroying super lasers? It never works out! Obi-Wan and Anakin confront Dooku, who is just about to escape. Anakin, impatient as ever, ends up getting knocked out thanks to Force lightning, leading Obi-Wan to face Dooku himself. This man has a curved lightsaber for some reason, felt like pointing that out. Dooku wounds Obi-Wan, but Anakin was able to bounce back and fight Dooku with 2 lightsabers before losing his hand. RIP. However, Dooku is forced to deal with one last opponent, Master Yoda himself. After learning the origin of the Lego Yoda death sound, the two engage in one of the more ridiculous looking lightsaber duels. Christopher Lee was in his late 70s when this movie was shot, and he's fighting with a 900-year-old green frog manically jumping around. This, right here, is peak cinema. It's one of those things that must be seen to be believed. It doesn't last too long as Yoda has to save Obi-Wan and Anakin from being crushed by a pillar, which consequently leads to Dooku's escape. Dooku returns to Coruscant to reveal the current state to Darth Sidious, which is going according to plans. Yoda officially declares the beginning of the Clone Wars, with an army of clones marching to the Imperial March, which is a very clever way of foreshadowing. On Naboo, Anakin Skywalker, now with a robotic hand, and Padme Amidala, going against the Jedi Code, secretly marry. C-3PO, R2-D2, and the pastor are their only witnesses. Overall, Episode 2 was weaker than Episode 1. The increased focus on romance and politics on top of the rather questionable dialogue for the former really put me off. The longer runtime really didn't help either. That said, the action sequences continue to shine, alongside the performances of Ewan McGregor, Christopher Lee, Samuel L. Jackson, and Ian McDiarmid. The actions within this movie do help shape the rest of the saga, but I couldn't help but feel bored for a majority of this one. To anyone who does like this movie, that's okay. You're welcome to have your own opinion. This one just wasn't my cup of Java juice. Here we are, the last installment in the prequel trilogy, the last Star Wars film to be released by 20th Century Fox, the first Star Wars film to be rated PG-13 by the MPAA, and the last live-action Star Wars film overall before the Disney buyout. For the next 7 years, the saga would be complete. How does it all end? Before we start, I'd like to point out that the Disney Plus description pretty much spoils the entire movie. I thought that was funny. The opening crawl informs us that WAR! Chancellor Palpatine has been kidnapped by the evil General Grievous. So our favorite duo, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, now a Jedi Knight, set out the rest of them. Right off the bat, this movie jumps straight into the action depicting a space battle between Republican and Separatist cruisers. Once again, the special effects really shine here.
This is where the fun begins.
Oh yeah, a lot of memes came from this movie, that's gonna be fun. It's during this sequence that R4-P17 is tragically killed by buzz droids. Rest in peace. The voices for the battle droids have also been changed for this movie, matching what they would eventually sound like in the Clone Wars TV show. Hearing the B2 models talk with this voice does sound off though. Even during the slower scenes of the opening, the action never really takes a break. R2 even murders two B2 droids with a little combination of oil and fire. Reaching the captive Chancellor, Obi-Wan and Anakin are met with a rematch against Count Dooku, which ends with payback for what he did to his hand. Dooku is also killed by Anakin after peer pressure from Palpatine.
Do it.
Honestly, even if there's still some issues with it, Hayden Christensen is doing a better job portraying Anakin here. I felt Episode 2's Anakin was a bit too angsty, but here he's actually being smart for once, finally learning what the word patience means. Following a brief encounter on the bridge, Grievous escapes, Palpatine is rescued, and Anakin crash lands whatever's left of the ship back down on Coruscant. Yippee. On the Senate grounds, Anakin meets up with his secret wife Padme, who reveals to him that she is pregnant. Again, I'm not a fan of romance films, but you can really tell how excited he is to become a father. And despite how awkward these scenes can get, you can tell they really do love each other. In spite of its excitement, Anakin begins to experience nightmares of Padme dying during childbirth, which, sadly, is a real thing. Meanwhile, Grievous arrives on the planet Utapau, where he is ordered by Darth Sidious to send all Separatist leaders to Mustafar, as part of the final steps to his... as part of the final steps to his master plan. Palpatine personally appoints Anakin to be his personal representative in the Jedi Council, which they hesitantly agreed to, albeit not granting him the rank of Master.
You are on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of Master.
What?
In return, the Council assigns Anakin to essentially spy on Palpatine, having grown increasingly concerned towards his dominant power over the Republic. The war has caused him to stay in office long after his term expired, which is definitely a major red flag in politics. Arriving at some sort of entertainment show, which has a brief cameo from George Lucas himself, Anakin has a private chat with the Chancellor, who shares his belief that the Jedi Council plan on betraying him to seize control of the Republic. We also get the iconic story of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Which, believe it or not, can be found in the files of the video game Memory. All memes aside, this scene is incredibly chilling. I'm starting to believe Ian McDiarmid was born to play this character. I can definitely see why this is considered the best of the prequels.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
On Kashyyyk, Yoda is leading a group of Wookiees, including Chewbacca, hey, and clones to combat a droid attack on the Wookiees. Obi-Wan is sent to Utapau to confront General Grievous, while Anakin continues to have nightmares, this time involving Obi-Wan, while reaffirming his fear of Padme's death.
Hello there.
Obi-Wan confronts himself, who responds by dabbing on him, pulling out 4 lightsabers, having taken them from the Jedi he's murdered. If I was in Obi-Wan's shoes, I would have passed out from the stress of that alone. Oh hey, it's my sleep paralysis demon. What's cooking? The two engage in a wild goose chase, which does go on for quite a bit, but hey, I'm not complaining, this is exciting! Having lost all their lightsabers, the two engage in a fist-to-fist confrontation until Obi-Wan gets his hands on a blaster, leading to one of the scenes that probably contributed to the PG-13 rating, killing Grievous.
So uncivilized.
Palpatine reveals to Anakin that he is, in fact, a Sith Lord, the very one that the Council was searching for, offering to teach Anakin the ways of the dark side, including the ability to save his wife from death. So what does Anakin do? Share this info to Mace Windu, who moves with 3 other Jedi to arrest him, not before insisting Anakin stays behind.
I am the Senate.
Palpatine, or should I say Darth Sidious, finally gets a chance to show off his skill against Windu, doing it in his own office. Seeing him jump around like Yoda did is oddly amusing, but you can really feel the tension of this scene. I tend to say that a lot, don't I? Desperate, Sidious uses Force Lightning on Windu, which backfires horribly, scarring him. Right before Windu can deal the final blow, Anakin, who showed up here by the way, follows to Sidious's clearly fake acting and chops off his hand, leading to his death by lightning. Anakin, clearly horrified by his actions, agrees to turn to the dark side, with Sidious hereby granting him the title of Darth Vader. This entire sequence seals the fate of the Jedi, and is, without a doubt, one of the darkest moments in all Star Wars. From this moment, shit starts to go down. Vader marches to the Jedi Temple with an entire fucking clone army, ready to wipe out whoever was just chilling there. Commander Cody, alongside the rest of the clones, receives an instruction from Sidious.
Execute Order 66.
Also known as Operation Nightfall. What follows is several sequences of many Jedi, including Ki-Adi-Mundi, Aayla Secura, and Plo Koon, being gunned down by their former allies. One of the saddest, most tragic, and heartbreaking scenes in all of Star Wars, capped off by Darth Vader slaughtering literal children. Jesus fucking Christ. Absolutely no one is safe. The final 4 episodes of the Clone Wars make this moment even worse, showing that some even hesitated to turn on their former allies. The Jedi saw them as not just clones, but as people, as friends, as someone they can trust. Something they will never experience, ever again. What follows next are 3 major events that quickly cut back and forth with each other. At a special session of Congress, Darth Sidious declares the Jedi enemies to the Republic, and announces the immediate reformation of the Galactic Republic into the First Galactic Empire, declaring himself as Emperor. Darth Vader flies over to Mustafar to have a chat with the Separatist leaders. And by chat, I mean completely slaughter them to the ground. This guy sure does have a thing for genocide now, huh? He also has yellow eyes now, so there's that. Seeing them murder Newt Gunray was very satisfying. Obi-Wan and Yoda investigate the ruins of the Jedi Temple, discovering that the attack was spearheaded by the man once known as Anakin Skywalker. Although reluctant, Obi-Wan sets out to pursue Vader, while Yoda heads off to fight the Emperor. Obi-Wan also confronts Padme about Anakin's fall, while also learning of the secret relationship. Padme sets out to confront Vader on Mustafar, not knowing that Obi-Wan's stowed away on the ship. The Emperor orders Vader to relay the announcement of the immediate shutdown of all droid army units, but not before he catches Padme flying down. Padme is horrified at the sight of Darth Vader, who begins to force choke her at the sight of Obi-Wan, under the belief that he turned Padme against the now Sith Lord. After scolding him for his actions, Obi-Wan and Vader proceed to engage in a lightsaber duel. And holy hell, this is my new favorite scene in all of Star Wars, and even one of my favorite scenes in all of fiction itself. Fast-paced, intense, with another killer score from John Williams to add up to all this. What makes this even better is that this isn't sped up at all. Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen were filmed at this exact speed. They rehearsed this duel for months, and it certainly paid off. Apparently, I looked this up after, and a few frames were cut out to make it more intense, but still, my compliments are here. Concurrently, however, is another duel with Yoda, the most powerful Jedi, up against the Emperor, the most powerful Sith. These battles truly make it clear that this is the end of an era. I could feel the goosebumps rising on my skin as this scene played out, even though I already knew the outcomes of both battles. But god damn, this is pure perfection. Combined, these fights go on for about 15 minutes, and is considered the longest sword fight in cinematic history. Sure, that could be viewed as filler, but man, I love this scene so fucking much, I don't care if it is. The Senate showdown ends with neither beating each other, but Yoda decides he must enter exile, having believed he has failed. Obi-Wan gains the high ground,
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
slicing off Anakin's legs and left arm, leaving him to die as he catches the blaze. The Emperor senses Vader is in trouble and sets off to rescue him. What follows are two key sequences that set up the original trilogy. Padme giving birth to twins, a boy named Luke, and a girl named Leia, and the Emperor using machines to resurrect Darth Vader as a cyborg. Honestly, if anything else in this movie wasn't enough to contribute to the PG-13 rating, then this solidifies it. This was the one movie my parents were hesitating on showing me until I was a bit older, mainly because of this scene alone. To give context, I was about 7 when I first watched Star Wars Episode 4, and would watch the others repeatedly, though I never watched Episode 3 until I was about 9. Even then, I had to cover my eyes during this whole scene because it was too intense for me at the time. Following the twins' birth, Padme dies, and Yoda advises that they be separated to be safe. Her funeral is held, with her corpse still holding the charm that little Anakin gave to her back in Episode 1. Darth Vader is reborn as the monster we know him as now, with the Emperor telling him that he killed Padme. Seeing the first time we hear the iconic breath chronologically is chilling. Poor guy's been through a lot, so this is honestly justified. Afterwards, the Empire begins construction on the Death Star, the main plot point of like 5 other movies. The final scene is Obi-Wan give Luke to the Lars family on Tatooine, officially bringing the prequel trilogy to a conclusion. Overall, I enjoyed Episode 3 a lot more than Episode 1 and 2. Not once was I bored at all during the movie. It managed to keep my attention throughout the entire runtime. The action sequences and score were top-notch as always, with the musical score really elevating them to a new level. Although, there were some small issues I had with the writing, it didn't affect my enjoyment in the slightest. I wouldn't be surprised if this one ends up within my top 3 movies in the entire saga. It's that damn good. Here we are, folks, the one that started it all, the movie that would change popular culture forever. This movie didn't have the Episode 4 subtitle originally, having been retroactively added in a 1981 re-release. This was also the only film in this saga that would remain under 20th Century Fox's ownership, even after Disney acquired Lucasfilm in 2012 due to 20th Century selling the merchandising and sequel rights to Lucasfilm. Although they managed to sort out the rights issues for a 2015 re-release on digital platforms, Disney would eventually acquire 20th Century Fox itself in 2019. Thus, finally placing ownership of the entire saga under one roof. So, for the very first installment in the iconic franchise, how well does it hold up? The opening crawl recaps the plot of... I really need to learn how to talk. The opening crawl recaps... The opening crawl recaps the plot of World... Oh my god. The opening crawl recaps... Fucking hell. The opening crawl recaps the plot of Rogue One to us. Okay, thank god I did it. A group of rebels have managed to steal plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star, and we are followed by a small ship being chased by a Star Destroyer. As this was made before CGI was as advanced as it is now, nearly all the special effects in this are practical. And you know, despite the notable difference, I don't mind it at all. There's a lot of cool things you can do with practical effects, and this movie, and by extension the original trilogy as a whole, is a shining example. It has this little charm to it that CGI can't quite replicate. The small ship is stormed by several stormtroopers led by Darth Vader himself. As I'm watching this after the prequels, I can't help but feel sorry for the poor guy after seeing how much he's been through. We then get to see Princess Leia put something secret in R2-D2, who escapes with C-3PO in a pod landing on Tatooine. The stormtroopers manage to capture Leia, who says she is on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan, which doesn't fool Vader. Down on Tatooine, the two droids have an argument which leads to them going their separate ways. However, both of them are ambushed by Jawas, leading to their reunion. A search battalion down on Tatooine... Oh, I forgot this was a special edition from 1997. Oh boy! That CGI iguana thing looks really out of place compared to the rest of the movie. Well, this is the version that's on Disney Plus, so I guess I'll have to tolerate it. I actually do have the original theatrical version of the VHS tape, although I sadly lacked a VHS player to watch it on. Getting back to the movie, a search battalion on Tatooine investigates the escape pod's crash site, and it learns that droids were on board. The job was parked their comically large RV in front of a moisture farm, home of Luke Skywalker. Luke and his uncle Owen Lars purchased a proto-droid C-3PO and the astromech droid R5-D4. R2-D2. While C-3PO hits an oil bath, Luke accidentally triggers a secret message hidden in R2. Leia asking for help from Obi-Wan Kenobi. The fact that it's basically common knowledge that Luke and Leia are siblings make any romantic implications between them really cringy. That aside, the performances so far are top-notch. Mark Hamill really nails the "I want to get off this planet" vibe. Sure, the dialogue is pretty corny, but it also adds to the charm of the movie. Speaking of getting off the planet, it's revealed that Luke dreams of becoming the pilot, which reminds his aunt of his father. So who's gonna tell him? After the iconic binary sunset scene, we are informed that R2 has gone missing, so Luke sets off to find him the following morning. However, he gets ambushed by a hunting party of Tusken Raiders who end up being scared off by a dragon-like sound. The sound is revealed to have come from the wise old man, John Herbert Ben Kenobi, who reveals himself to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. The actor portraying Obi-Wan, Sir Alec Guinness, famously despised being associated with the character after the movie exploded in popularity, in addition to not being a fan of the script. Even so, his performance is top-notch, and apparently inspired the cast and crew to work harder. Obi-Wan reveals that he, alongside Luke's father Anakin, were once Jedi Knights who fought in the Clone Wars, while also speaking highly of Anakin's piloting skills. Obi-Wan gives Luke his father's lightsaber while sharing the story of the Jedi and the Force, offering to train Luke in the ways of such. When asked how his father died, Obi-Wan states that he was killed by his former pupil, Darth Vader. Even though they are technically the same person, this explanation does make some sense. Anakin Skywalker was the young Jedi, while Darth Vader is the evil Sith, hellbent on hunting down every last Jedi. In a way, Vader did murder Anakin. Luke and Obi-Wan find the ruins of the Sandcrawler, and after realizing that stormtroopers could have used it to track him down, Luke rushes back to see what's left of his home.
Blast points, too accurate for sand people. Only Imperial stormtroopers are so precise.
Are you sure about that, pal? This fills Luke with determination to learn the ways of the Force, with Obi-Wan agreeing to teach him. Arriving at Mos Eisley, okay, we don't need this many CGI creatures. And cleverly evading a band of stormtroopers, the two humans enter the LEGO Star Wars Cantina in search of a pilot to escort them to Alderaan.
Hey, we don't serve their kind here.
What?
Your droids. They'll have to wait outside. We don't want them here.
Well, that's just racist. An unfortunate encounter with two rogues leads to Luke being pushed out and a lost arm. It's weird to see blood in a Star Wars movie, let alone caused by a lightsaber attack. Luke and Obi-Wan meet up with Han Solo and Chewbacca, who agrees to fly them for 17,000 credits. Han has an encounter with the bounty hunter Greedo, which sparked the age-old Han shot first debate. It doesn't help that this scene has been changed multiple times, with the most recent revision showing that both fired at nearly the same time. Han Solo meets up with Jabba the Hutt in a scene that was cut from the original release, and you know, I actually like the CGI in this scene. One of the few that actually works here. Jabba himself remains the hottest Star Wars character, of course. The party regroups on board Han Solo's ship, the Millennium Falcon, the successfully escaping Imperial Squidward and his stormtrooper comrades. Elsewhere, at an Imperial meeting, Grand Moff Tarkin shares that the Emperor has dissolved the Imperial Senate, while also promising that Darth Vader will have the location of the Rebel base by the time the Death Star is operational. That is, if we can get it out of Leia, who is refusing to spill the info, even resisting a mind probe. That girl sure is stubborn. Deciding to take things to the extreme, Tarkin orders the Death Star to fly through the Alderaan system, intent on showcasing the power of the space station. A super laser capable of destroying whole planets. Horrified, Leia lies on the spot that the Rebel base is on Dantooine, but that doesn't stop Tarkin from firing anyways. And just like that, millions, perhaps billions of lives are no more. This scene alone shows how evil Tarkin is. Hell, I'd say even more so than Darth Vader. Peter Cushing really nails his job here. Shame that this was the only Star Wars film he was in. Unless you count that CGI resurrection in Rogue One. The heroes arrive at Alderaan, or at least what's left of it, and follow a lone TIE fighter to a small moon.
That's not a moon. It's a space station.
Scratch that, I mean space station. And by space station, I mean the Death Star. The Falcon is trapped in the tractor beam, forcing them to board it. Darth Vader senses a presence he hasn't felt since sometime, while stormtroopers continue to prove themselves to be the smartest beings in Star Wars, allowing Luke and Han to disguise themselves as such. 3 set out to rescue the princess, though not without some arguing and having to convince Chewbacca to play the role of prisoner to add to the convincing, while Obi-Wan heads off to disable the tractor beam. Princess Leia is rescued, who knows a lot more about escaping than the others. Unfortunately, this escape route leads them into a trash compactor with some sort of creature living there and wallows the crush them to death. Fortunately, they do survive thanks to good old R2. After disabling the tractor beam, Obi-Wan comes face to face with Darth Vader himself, and after Revenge of the Sith showed them going all out against each other, here they just kinda swing their lightsabers at each other like they're both tired. Granted, this was the first lightsaber duel ever filmed, and it actually does make sense in universe. Obi-Wan is far older than he was back then, and Vader now being a cyborg does hinder his mobility. I can't talk. And Vader now being a cyborg does hinder his mobility greatly, and as I said earlier, they are both tired. That said, there is a fan-made remake of this scene on the YouTube channel FXA in Post, which I highly recommend checking out. It's super well done. Obi-Wan also addresses his enemy as Darth, as if that was actually his first name and not a title. Initially another case of early installment weirdness, this was validated in the final episode of the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show in 2022.
Goodbye, Darth.
Obi-Wan allows Vader to strike him down, allowing him to become more possible than he could possibly imagine. Allowing him to become more powerful than he could possibly imagine. Or, in simpler terms, becoming one with the Force. The rest do get away successfully, though are chased down by a squad of TIE fighters. These are taken out thanks to Luke and Han having better aim than every stormtrooper ever. Oh, you bet I'm gonna run this joke into the fucking ground. The Falcon lands on the moon of Yavin 4, which is the true location of the Rebel base. R2 shares the Death Star plan to the Rebels, which reveals that there is a weak spot that, if hit, could destroy the whole station. After Luke has a chance to connect with his old friend Biggs, he sets off in an X-Wing fighter ship alongside a whole fleet of Rebel pilots to take down the Death Star once and for all. With 15 minutes until the super laser is fired, there is no room for error here. If they fail, it's game over. This helps provide the tension to this scene, with Rebels being down left and right thanks to the Imperials counterattacking with TIE fighters. Darth Vader even joins in with his own personal TIE fighter, shooting down multiple Y-Wing bombers. After a failed attempt to hit the weak spot and with 1 minute left on the timer, Luke flies down to the trench to go after it himself. Although he tries to use projector, Obi-Wan's spirit advises him to use the Force. Luckily, this ends up working in his favor, and he's able to fire the proton torpedoes to hit the weak spot without even needing it. Han Solo even came back to help him clear him of any ties on his tail. With that, the Death Star is destroyed, a major blow to the Empire and a big win for the Rebels. Fun fact, the Star Wars timeline uses this event to format the years. Anything before was referred to as Before the Battle of Yavin, or BBY, while anything after is After the Battle of Yavin, or ABY. This year is 0 ABY in universe. Han and Luke are awarded medals thanks to their heroic acts, although poor Chewie is snubbed, and everything ends all fine and dandy. For now. Overall, episode 4 continues to hold up today. While episode 3 is still my favorite so far, this one is still a fun time. There's a lot of early installment weirdness in this one, given that they probably had no idea this would spawn a whole franchise. Hell, George Lucas was so certain this would bomb that instead of attending the premiere, he went on vacation with Hawaii with Steven Spielberg, and it was there they came up with the idea for Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. One could imagine how he felt when this became the highest grossing film of all time. Still, it may have its flaws, but it's such a fun movie that I could care less about that. The fact that it was a special edition didn't hinder my enjoyment either, but it would be nice to have the original theatrical version on Disney Plus one day. Widely considered to be the best Star Wars movie, this one has a darker tone compared to the first, which has led to every sequel with a darker tone compared to this movie. The Empire Strikes Back is also home to arguably the most famous and misquoted plot twist in cinematic history. So then it must be good, right? As with episode 4, this is the updated special edition from 1997, but hopefully the thing of not affecting my enjoyment applies to this as well. The opening crawl shares that the Rebels are on the run after their victory in Yavin 4, having established a new base on the ice planet of Hoth. Darth Vader in particular is obsessed with finding Luke Skywalker, for reasons that will be elaborated on later. The Empire has dispatched several probe droids across the galaxy to find the new Rebel base, with a couple of them landing on Hoth. Our old pal Luke is exploring the frozen planet when he's suddenly attacked by a Wampa, who takes him to his ice cavern. He does get out at the cost of the poor thing's arm. While escaping and likely suffering from hypothermia, he gets a vision from the spirit of Obi-Wan, who tells him to go to the Dagobah system to find Yoda, the Jedi Master who instructed him. I called bullshit on this line because it was clearly Qui-Gon, but the scene in episode 2 where Yoda's training a bunch of younglings at once kind of validates this point. Elsewhere, Han Solo, who is also exploring the area, returns to the Rebel base safely to share that he's taking off, only for him to be informed that Luke is missing. This leads to Han to set out to find Luke, linking the two plot threads I just went over. I'm pretty sure this scene of Han using the lightsaber is the only time a non-Force sensitive human was depicted doing so. A squad by the name of Road 2 escorts the duo back to Echo Base, which is the name of the location by the way, where Luke receives immediate medical treatment in a scene that becomes super awkward in hindsight. The rebels discover a probe droid that exposes their location to the Empire, but hey, at least Han shot it at first. With the Imperials in hot pursuit, the rebels began a mass evacuation, initiating the Battle of Hoth, another one of the many iconic Star Wars scenes. There's going to be a lot of these, prepare yourselves. Of course, this includes the massive AT-AT walkers, or AT-AT walkers, however you pronounce it, which I thought were based on camels until a quick Google search corrected it as elephants instead. I'd comment on the music for this scene, but you already know what I'm going to say. Another banger as always, plays John Williams, blah blah blah. This track in particular is a personal favorite of mine. We're then shown how to defeat an AT-AT, put a tow cable onto it, circle it around, and witness one of the most amusing things in the saga. Or just do what Luke did and climb up the thing, tell yourself an opening and throw a bomb. Did I mention his co-pilot was killed? Because that happened. Unlike the Battle of Yavin, the rebels are defeated by the Imperials, with all of the important characters successfully escaping, with Luke and R2 leaving for Dagobah and the rest stuck in a storm of TIE fighters and Star Destroyers. The escape for the others is tense, with the Imperials constantly on their tail, on top of having to navigate through an asteroid field. I will say, so far the attention provided by this movie is top-notch. It's definitely a huge step up from episode 4.
Sir, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1!
Never tell me the odds.
To allow themselves to hide, Han lands Millennium Falcon inside a freighter in one of the bitter asteroids. At least they thought it was just a freighter. As it turns out, they actually land inside a giant worm-like creature. Who would have digested them alive if they hadn't realized the truth about that freighter? Prior to this realization, C-3PO informs Han that the power coupling is damaged and should be replaced. After a kiss between Han and Leia, the scene cuts back to the Imperials, with the Emperor contacting Darth Vader to warn him about Luke, who is a dangerous enemy to them, but could become a powerful ally if turned to the dark side. This scene was actually another update from the original version, where he was portrayed by Marjorie Eaton, dubbed by Clive Revell. Now he is portrayed, both physically and vocally, by Ian McDermott, who plays him in every other movie. This change was implemented in 2004, and I personally preferred this scene over the original, as it better lines up with the rest of the saga. During this time, Luke finds himself on Dagobah, which turns out to be a giant swamp, complete with murky lakes and creatures inhabiting said murky lakes. His search for Yoda leads him to find some green frog thing that totally isn't Yoda. As with the last movie, the practical effects really shine here, having a charm that CGI can't quite replicate. In this case, Yoda is a puppet, and it fits the unhinged persona he takes on. Seriously, this guy is a fucking madman, and he's over 900 years old. Luke eventually realizes that not Yoda is Yoda, who insists that Luke isn't ready for training, owing to his impatience. He does manage to convince the old man, however. Said training consists of Luke running through the swamp while Yoda sits on his back, lecturing him on the dark side and the light side and blah blah blah. Luke also senses something coming from a cave, so he goes to check it out. He ends up being greeted by an apparition of Darth Vader, something so spooky it causes the frame rate to go down. Luke decapitates Vader, whose helmet explodes to reveal another Luke inside? Young Anakin? Honestly, I'm not sure what exactly this was, but I think it was meant to foreshadow a future plot point. Yoda also tries to get Luke to lift his sunken X-Wing with the Force, who gives up quite easily, considering it impossible. Yoda proves it isn't impossible by doing it for him. Show off. Following this, Luke senses his friend in danger, and, despite warnings from Yoda and Obi-Wan, flies off to save them. Back on the Falcon, which is currently being pursued by a Star Destroyer, Jane learns that jumping into hyperspace isn't quite possible thanks to the damaged power coupling. We also get a shot of multiple bounty hunters within the Star Destroyer, including Boba Fett, who are informed of the bounty on the Falcon. Darth Vader specifically requests that crew be captured alive. However, an officer shares that the Falcon has disappeared off their tracking radar. The captain makes the crucial mistake of apologizing to the Dark Lord himself, who chokes him to death as a form of acceptance. So, where exactly did the Falcon go? Right on the Star Destroyer's trash lid, allowing them to escape in peace. Totally. Han flies the Falcon to Cloud City, a floating city located above the planet Bespin, and meets up with his old friend Lando Calrissian. The scenery for this planet is absolutely gorgeous. Definitely one of my favorites in the series. I love the overall aesthetics of the city itself, and I think the orange sky goes along perfectly with it. After a brief introduction with Lando, C-3PO being blown to bits and nearly incinerated only to be saved by Chewbacca, the gang sits down to have a nice, calm dinner with Darth Vader. Hey, wait a minute! Of course, this is revealed to be a setup by Lando, as the Imperials apparently arrive right before the others. You snooze, you lose. Although Lando does begin to have regrets about this as the time goes on, as the Dark Lord was only using Leia and Chewie as bait to lure Luke over. which does work. He intends to freeze the young Jedi in training in Carbonite to deliver him to the Emperor, using Han Solo as a test subject to see if it's safe. The test is run following an outburst by Chewie and a confession from Leia.
I love you.
I know.
And as it turns out, he's alive. Darth Vader hands Captain Boba Fett for delivery to Jabba the Hutt, in addition to always changing the terms of the deal, as any shady individual does while collaborating with others. As a result, Lando goes back on the deal, assisting the others in escaping but failing to rescue Han. Taking the bait, Luke finds himself in the Carbonite facility with Vader. Engaging in a lightsaber duel that again lacks the energy of the prequels, but resembles an actual duel more so than the previous one. Still, this fight is well choreographed, reminiscent of a fencing match. The limited action also makes sense in context, given Luke's lack of proper lightsaber skills, and again, Vader's own mobility being limited as a result of him becoming a cyborg. The slower pacing also helps differentiate it from the prequels, which I do appreciate. Throughout the fight, Vader tempts Luke to turn to the dark side, which goes about as well as you expect. This culminates in Luke losing his hand. Damn, the series is a thing for people losing their hands, huh? Followed by one of the most, if not the most, famous, iconic, and misquoted plot twist in pop culture history.
No, I am your father.
It's one of those scenes that gives you goosebumps, even if you know exactly what's about to come. After learning the horrifying truth, Vader once again tries to get Luke to join the dark side. You'd think he'd learn he isn't going to budge by now.
Come with me. It is the only way.
Close. Using the Force to communicate with Leia, the Falcon swoops in and safely rescues him. As it turns out, the Imperials sneakily deactivated the hyperdrive from the Falcon, preventing them from jumping to hyperspace. Luckily, R2-D2 does successfully repair it, so the Dane finally manages to escape. Luke is equipped with a new robotic hand. The Dane, now joined by Lando, promises to save Han, and the movie ends on a cliffhanger as the heroes hold on to whatever hope they have next. They have left, I meant. A very powerful ending, in my opinion. Now I'm anxious to see what happens next. Overall, yeah, episode 5 is the best one, there's no denying it. What can I say that hasn't already been said? The action is top notch, the tension is perfect, the darker tone really fits the story, and the special effects continue to shine. Once again, the special edition changes did not affect my enjoyment in the slightest, although having the original version available wouldn't hurt. The Empire Strikes Back has rightfully earned this place as not only the best Star Wars movie so far, but one of the greatest movies ever made. It is truly worthy of being called a masterpiece. I'd be very surprised if any of the next movies manage to top it somehow. Back when I was young and watched Star Wars on VHS or DVD non-stop, this was the one I was watching the most. I'm not sure what about this movie stood out to me, but maybe this revisit will answer that question. Being the final installment in the original trilogy, this one was the ending to the Skywalker Saga for the longest time, not counting any non-film media that took place after episode 6, like books or comics. So, is this former final chapter a satisfactory conclusion to what I've watched so far? You know the drill at this point, so Actually, a quick disclaimer. At the time of writing, Disney has re-released this movie in theaters in honor of its 40th anniversary. As a result, I watched this on the big screen and will be writing this section using the clips I have to review. So, if the writing seems a bit off, I apologize. Following the final time we will be hearing 20th Century Fox's iconic fanfare preceding the movie, the opening crawl catches us up on what has happened since episode 5. Luke Skywalker has returned to his home planet of Tatooine to rescue Han Solo, still frozen in Carbonite and now in captivity by Jabba the Hutt. Meanwhile, the Empire is building a second Death Star said to be more powerful than the first, which is officially named, get this, Death Star 2. And I thought I was uncreative with names. Although it looks incomplete, this is actually a ruse. The space station is, in fact, fully operational. Unbeknownst to the rebels, Darth Vader boards the ship and shares with an Imperial commander that the Emperor is arriving, forcing him to double their work efforts. Honestly, if I was slacking off and told the same thing, I would have had the same reaction. That man is fucking terrifying. On the ground, the droid duo of C-3PO and R2-D2 arrive at Jabba's palace requesting access. Said request is subsequently granted. R2 is carrying a message to Jabba from Luke, which states his wishes to have an arrangement made to free Han. As a gift of appreciation, he gives the droid to Jabba, although the Prime Lord isn't going to give up his favorite decoration that easily. We're also treated to Gaunt Droid torture, and one of the scenes that was added in the special edition. This is one of those changes in which I'm not sure how to feel about it. Apparently this scene where Ula, Jabba's slave dancer, arrives in the Rainforest Pit was filmed during the production of the special edition, which is pretty impressive that she maintained the same physicality over a decade later. Following this, a bounty hunter named Bouch arrives with a Captain Chewbacca, offering to turn him in for 50,000 credits using the art of holding someone at well, grenade point to negotiate. Jabba agrees to pay 35,000 for this, up from his initial offer of 25,000. At least he got some increase. That night, Bausch dismounts the frozen Han from the wall and arranges for his unfreezing. Han finally awakes from his hibernation, albeit without his sight for the time being. Bausch reveals himself, or should I say herself, to be Leia in disguise. But their escape is thwarted by Jabba and pals, because there's no way he would have slipped through that.
I know that laugh.
Han is thrown into the same captivity cell as Chewbacca, and Leia is made into Jabba's new slave, which may have led to my first horny awakening as a child. I know I'm not alone in that experience. As all previous efforts have failed, Luke Skywalker himself arrives, hoping to free all his friends. Jedi mind tricks don't work on the Hutt, who refuses to negotiate and sends him to the Rancor cell. It's here we bear witness to the Rancor itself, which, fun fact, has a name. It's Batista. I probably butchered that, but it's far from the first time in this video. Seeing this giant behemoth made using only practical effects is spectacular. It's amazing that they were able to make this work at all. Luke, being protected by his plot armor, manages to kill poor Batista by dropping the gate on it. You learn something new every day. Enraged, Jabba arranges for Luke, Han, and Chewie to be fed to the Sarlacc pit. We finally get to see R2's new job being a waiter on Jabba's sail barge. He was also holding Luke's new lightsaber, which he constructed between episodes 5 and 6, and as he lost his old one. Rather than blue, this one is green. Boba Fett is also thrown into the Sarlacc pit and not killed amazingly, while Jabba is strangled by Leia using the chain leashing her and is killed. This whole scene is fast-paced, intense, and satisfying to watch. The action provided is peak Star Wars. The sail barge is destroyed, and everyone gets to escape in peace, including Lando, who is hiding among the guards in the palace. Back on Death Star 2, your royal hideousness arrives, and I forgot that he was shorter than Darth Vader. The two reaffirm their goal of turning Luke to the dark side, as if Vader has learned nothing from their last encounter. Speaking of Luke, he was a Dagobah to return to Yoda, who is finally starting to die after 900 years. Before passing on, he confirms to Luke that Darth Vader is indeed his father, and he needs to confront him to become a true Jedi. In addition to the ominous phrase, there is another Skywalker. With that, Grandmaster Yoda becomes one with the Force. The spirit of Obi-Wan arrives to share that his statement of Vader killing Anakin was true, from a certain point of view. If you think about it, he is right. Anakin Skywalker is gone. Darth Vader is what remains. Obi-Wan also reveals that Luke is a twin, with a sister that was separated at birth to protect him from the Emperor. Luke correctly guesses that this sister of his is Leia, which makes any romantic moments from the last two movies very hard to look at. A Rebel briefing shows that the second Death Star is orbiting the forest moon of Endor with a shield generator on the planet protecting it. Han leads the main gang to the ground to destroy said generator, while Lando, who is now General, plans to lead a fleet of Star Destroyers. Plans to lead a fleet of fire ships into the space station itself once the shield is down. Once they've landed, the heroes are running with a group of scout troopers, which are a type of stormtrooper trained to be more independent and adaptable, but clearly have the same marksmanship skills. Two of these escape on nearby speeders, with Luke and Leia chasing them on two more speeders that happen to be close by. This speeder chase is another addition to the list of iconic Star Wars scenes, although this one actually gave me a little motion sickness. That may have to do with the fact that I was watching this on a much bigger screen than the others. Again, I watched this in theaters as opposed to Disney+. Leia ends up lost in the Force due to her speeder being shot, while Luke manages to regroup with the others. Leia has a much friendlier run-in with an Endor native known as an Ewok, named Wicket W. Warrick. Yes, that's actually his full name. While the Rez have a not-so-friendly encounter with a whole squad of Ewoks, who sees C-3PO as a god. For those that don't know, Ewoks are basically living teddy bears, and one of the more controversial Star Wars editions, with some believing their whole existence makes the film too kiddie or is a way to sell toys. Personally, I don't really mind these things too much. Call it blind nostalgia if you must, but they're harmless compared to other marketable species in film. Anyways, the Ewoks bestow the heroes the honor of being their dinner tonight. Leia, who is actually accepted by the Ewoks, tries to get C-3PO, who the Ewoks still believe is a god, to tell locals to let them go, which doesn't work. Instead, Luke uses the Force to make C-3PO fly, which does work. It's quite the sight to behold. Luke privately tells Leia that she's his sister, something she's somehow always known. Luke also announces to her that he's trying to surrender himself to Darth Vader and the Emperor, hoping that he can turn his father back to the light side, much to her dismay. Just like Luke last time, Vader refuses to switch sides, but accompanies him to the Emperor. I've gone this long without mentioning it, but compared to the other films, Palpatine is quite goofy here. Not in terms of his characterization, he's still the textbook definition of pure evil, no doubt, but Ian McDermott's performance here, something about it is oddly funny to witness. The Emperor shares that he allowed the rebels to learn the location of the shield generator, luring them into a trap. With this, he hopes that Luke uses his anger to strike down the Emperor, converting him into a Sith. On that subject, I know this may come down to early installment weirdness, but it's a bit strange that the word Sith is never actually said at all throughout the original trilogy. I guess I hadn't figured out what exactly they were by then. Following a failed attempt to destroy the shield generator, the Imperials are attacked by the entire Ewok community, thus starting the Battle of Endor. Seeing this evil military with giant mechanized walkers getting their asses kicked by living teddy bears using sticks and stones is hilariously satisfying. That's the only part of this battle. Up in the skies, Lando's squad is fighting a group of TIE fighters and Star Destroyers only to realize that the Death Star shield is still up. A laser is fired from the space station attached by the Emperor to taunt Luke, making the rebels aware that this thing is indeed operational. Unlike the first Death Star, which had a cooldown time of 24 hours, this one's cooldown is only 3 minutes long. Now that is nightmare fuel. Even with all the blows the rebels take, including R2 and Leia being shot, the tide does manage to turn in the rebels' favor, leading to these particularly amusing sights of AT-STs being crushed by logs and slipping on logs. After seeing Chewie and 2 Ewoks piloting one of them, Han gets the dumbest idea ever. And yet, it somehow works. Thanks to this, the shield generator is destroyed, allowing Lando's fleet to make their attack. While all this is happening, Luke finally gets angry enough to attack the Emperor, who is defended by Vader. This leads to one last duel between father and son, and while this duel is excellent, this lightsabers clashing did hurt my eyes a bit. That theater was a dark room after all. Still, this is an excellent fight, providing all the action and tension you could ask for. Vader learns that Luke has a twin sister, threatening to turn her to the dark side if Luke does not comply. Of course, this is what ends up setting Luke off, ending up with him getting payback for the Cloud City duel. After the Emperor praises him for this, Luke realizes what he had just done, and reaffirms his refusal to turn over. Having finally realized that Luke turning over is not going to happen, Palpatine decided to kill Luke using his trademark Force Lightning, while the Jedi begs his father to save him. This is where Palpatine stops being the goofy to me, and fully demonstrates the monster he is.
Skywalker, you will die.
Unable to stand seeing his son in pain, Darth Vader finally turns back to the light side as the reborn Anakin Skywalker grabs his former master and hurls him down a shaft, sending him to his demise and finally fulfilling his destiny as the Chosen One. However, the lightning has damaged the supplies necessary to his survival, so right before Luke leaves, he requests his son to take his mask off so he can finally see his child with his own 2 eyes. Anakin confirms to Luke that he is already saved, dying peacefully as Luke later cremates his body on Endor. After seeing how much shit that guy went through, this was a pretty emotional scene, and seeing him hurl the Emperor down was super satisfying. With that shield down, Lando finally leads his squad to destroy the second Death Star, ending the reign of the Galactic Empire once and for all. Thanks to scenes added in the special edition, we get to see a galaxy-wide celebration held at the Empire's defeat, covering planets like Coruscant and Naboo. The original version only had Endor shown, and these additions make the celebratory feeling much more impactful. Luke returns to join the celebration, being looked upon by the spirits of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, and finally, Anakin Skywalker. With that, the film, as well as the original trilogy, comes to a conclusion. Overall, I stand corrected from when I said Episode 5 was my favorite, because that title belongs to Episode 6. Sure, it was more lighthearted than the last one, but I don't mind. Seeing the Empire finally fall was very satisfying. The action and tension are as engaging as it should be, and the special effects in this were spectacular. Really, the fact that most of these were done with practical effects is insane. This is a strong conclusion to this trilogy, and does work as an ending to the entire saga. That said, as proven by the countless novels, there are still more stories to be told beyond this one. Return of the Jedi will forever remain my favorite Star Wars movie, and I'd be extremely surprised if any of the next movies manage to surpass it for me. A little fun fact that I'm sure everyone knows, the original title for this movie was Revenge of the Jedi, even appearing on a few posters. This was changed because revenge is not the Jedi way, according to George Lucas. Well, 32 years later, and we finally have a proper continuation to Return of the Jedi. The first film in the long-discussed sequel trilogy. The first Star Wars film after Lucasfilm was acquired by the Walt Disney Company. The first Star Wars film to have no involvement from George Lucas, and the first to open without the iconic 20th Century Fox fanfare. All that out of the way, the hype for this movie was massive, scoring the largest opening weekend for any movie at the time, and becoming only the third movie ever to gross $2 billion at the box office. I remember going to see this for my 14th birthday on the 20th, 2 days after release, with a lot of my friends and family, and enjoying the hell out of it. Now, 17 years and 2 divisive sequels later, do I still enjoy it? The opening crawl lets the world know that Luke Skywalker has vanished. Wait, what the fuck? While he's been away, a new evil organization known as the First Order has risen, hell-bent on finding and exterminating Luke. The Last Jedi. Meanwhile, General Leia Organa leads a new heroic faction known as the Resistance to fight back against the new threat, having sent her most daring pilot, Poe Dameron, to the planet Jakku, where an old ally has discovered a clue to Luke's whereabouts. Poe's companion droid, BB-8, alerts him of the First Order's arrival, who easily gun down any opposition. Poe attempts to escape, but it seems the stormtroopers have finally learned how to aim, having damaged his ship to prevent him from taking off. During the massacre in this village, one of the stormtroopers has an epiphany after his dying ally taints his helmet with their blood. The new Darth Vader lookalike known as Kylo Ren lands on the planet, kills the old man who gave Poe the info, then proceeds to freeze a blaster bolt in midair. Now that is sheer awesomeness. You know, I remember some friends of mine being concerned that Disney would make Star Wars more lighthearted and kid-friendly, but it looks like the opening scene being a fucking massacre proved them all otherwise. Honestly, now that I think about it, Star Wars has been darker than it's ever been since the buyout. Kinda ironic. On the new Star Destroyer, a high-ranking stormtrooper named Captain Phasma finds a defective trooper, FN-2187, and asks him to turn in his blaster for inspection. Poe is being interrogated by Ren, who uses the power of the dark side to learn the location of the map, being an inside BB-8. Afterwards, the defect helps Poe escape, boarding the TIE fighter and causing quite the ruckus in the hangar. As a show of thanks, Poe gives FN-2187 the name of Finn. I love the relationship and chemistry between these two. It reminds me of two siblings talking back and forth or something like that, I don't know. However, their celebration doesn't last too long as they are hit by a blast that causes them to crash down on Jakku. Finn is shown to have survived, but Poe is nowhere in sight. The TIE fighter they were riding in is consumed by quicksand. Back on the ship, Ren makes it clear to General Hux, a higher up of the First Order, that he really wants that map, even if it goes against the explicit order of Supreme Leader Snoke, their mysterious leader. Elsewhere, we meet a scavenger girl by the name of Rey, rummaging through the remains of an old Star Destroyer for parts. Rey herself lives in the remains of an AT-AT walker, which I would really love to know how it got there. She finds and rescues BB-8 from some odd-looking guy, who starts following her around.
For my family. They'll be back. One day.
Are you sure about that, pal? Despite a tempting offer from a merchant, Rey refuses to sell BB-8 to him, which causes him to call a group on them. Luckily, she knows how to fend for herself, definitely helped by her staff. She also sees Finn, who arrived in the market, who beats him up upon BB-8's request. He catches the girl and the droid up to speed, including sharing that Poe is dead, and that he is part of the Resistance. Guess which one of those is true. The group is seen by a group of stormtroopers, so they escape using some random ship. Using some pile of garbage. And by that, I mean none other than the Millennium Falcon. I remember everyone in my theater clapping when this was revealed, and I can see why it's such a good reveal. Thankfully, Rey is a skilled pilot, and with Finn manning the gunner seat, the Dean successfully manages to evade the TIE fighters following them. And now here's the part where I compliment the special effects. Hate me all you want for saying this, but I think the sequels have the best visuals of the saga. Yes, the ones from the prior two trilogies managed to stand on their own, but these look extra polished, taking a near-realistic style. I also appreciate the use of practical effects, in addition to CGI. Oh yeah, Ren doesn't take the news of their escape well. A critical component on the Falcon's short circuits, right before the ship is forced to board a bigger ship. The ship is then boarded by the original pilots, Han Solo and Chewbacca. As it turns out, the Falcon was stolen from Han by some guy, which got stolen by some other guy, which then got stolen by that merchant, and now it's been stolen by Rey. This bigger ship is boarded by two criminal groups, the Wavian Death Gain and Country Club. If I mispronounce any of those, please let me know. Both of which Han owes money to, apparently. While crawling around their hiding space, Rey accidentally pulls a switch that releases giant things known as Wrath Stars, one of which gets a hold of Finn for a moment. He manages to get saved thanks to Rey closing the door at just the right moment, severing the tentacles holding the poor guy. Following the group's escape, we see Ren and Hux meeting with this Snoke figure, who definitely won't be getting any luck on Tinder. I'll be honest here, I thought this was the actual size of that motherfucker when I first watched this, but as it turns out, it's just a hologram. Snoke tells Ren that there's been an awakening, then dropping the bombshell that Ren is Han Solo's son. BB-8 reveals the map that's inside of it, and while Han is sharing how Luke disappeared, his apprentice turned on him, and he felt responsible, Rey realizes that the myths about the Force and the Jedi are, in fact, true. All of it. Rumors also spread around that Luke went searching for the very first Jedi Temple. The group lands on the planet Takodana, where Han is kindly greeted by Maz Kanata in a building filled with strange creatures that are definitely Star Wars characters alright. Two of these pull out their comms to alert the Resistance and the First Order that BB-8 is at their location. Finn reveals to Rey that he is not from the Resistance, saying that he is done with the First Order. He asks Rey to come with him, which she declines. Rey hears the sound of a young girl screaming "No!" from the cellars of the castle. I'm pretty sure this is a castle. So as any curious person does, she follows the sound to the source. She discovers none other than Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber, which Luke lost during the Cloud City duel. Come to think of it, I don't think it was ever explained how it ended up here. Rey also has a vision upon touching the weapon, consisting of Luke and R2-D2 at a burning temple. A group known as the Knights of Ren, a young Rey screaming at some ship to come back, and an encounter with Kylo Ren in the snowy forest. I don't think this vision was ever elaborated upon further, but I guess it could be seen as the Force awakening in her. On the First Order's base, a snowy planet that has been terraformed into a superweapon known as Starkiller Base, General Hux gives a speech declaring the end of the Republic, which is incredibly chilling. It goes to show that you don't have to be a Sith to be evil.
And we'll remember this as the last day of the Republic!
The weapon fires its laser, destroying a group of planets known as the Hansian systems? I'm sorry. Which hosts the capital of the New Republic. Okay, I've gone this long without mentioning it once, but I had to bring it up at some point. One common criticism of this movie is its similarities to Episode 4. Droid containing valuable info, new Jedi is a seemingly nobody, giant planet-killing weapon, the list goes on. And honestly, I agree with this. It would have been nice to be more original, although I understand why they did this. But hey, I'm enjoying this movie so far, so it's no big issue. Back to the story, the First Order seems to have responded to their transmission as a fleet of stormtroopers arrive and destroy the place to find BB-8. Finn, armed with the Skywalker lightsaber, encounters the infamous TR-8R, I mean FN2189, the funny name is better, which quickly became a meme when this came out.
Raider!
They also die after like 20 seconds. The odds seem low for the Resistance, but luckily the other transmission was also answered, with a fleet of X-Wings showing up to save their asses. It's also shown here that Poe survived, thank God. I forgot to mention that Ren was aboard the ship, with his capturing priorities now shifted to Rey. Ren freezes the unlucky girl in place with the Force, taking her captive to scan her mind, and the First Order fleet retreats. Immediately after, another Resistance ship arrives, with none other than the now General Leia Organa on board. Oh, and C-3PO too, now with a right arm for some reason. The Resistance members all fly to their base on Dakar. I have to look up the names of these planets because they're rarely specified on screen. With Finn and Poe happily reunited, Han and Leia arguing with each other as nearly every divorced couple does, and BB-8 uncovering a powered-off R2-D2. Wait, holy shit! Part of Han and Leia's conversation says that Ren had too much Vader in him, and if you stop and think about it, it's actually quite sad. The Chosen One is not remembered as Anakin Skywalker. The great Jedi Knight once prophesied to bring balance to the Force, but it's Darth Vader, the monstrous Sith Lord that decimates anyone and anything in his path. The poor guy has been through a lot, and even after his redemption, he cannot escape his horrible actions. And now that is truly a tragedy. Rey awakens on Ren's ship, who taunts her captor as a creature in a mask. In response, Ren takes off his mask, showing that he is a human. Ren continues his attempt to extract Rey's knowledge of the map, which is unsuccessful thanks to Rey fighting back with the Force, once again taunting him that he won't be as strong as Vader. Snoke is enraged that the map still hasn't been discovered, and orders the super laser to be fired at the Resistance base. As it turns out, Rey is indeed Force sensitive, managing to use the good old Jedi mind trick to free herself. Apparently that Stormtrooper was played by Daniel Craig, which is hilarious to think she basically mind tricked James Bond. Ren doesn't take this well. The Resistance devises a plan to destroy Starkiller Base before it fires on their own base. Okay, this is literally episode 4, add that to the list of similarities. Prior to taking off, Leia confesses that she did miss Han, who still drives her crazy. She gives him one last request, to bring their son home. With 15 minutes until it fires, the heroes must destroy a critical component to make the entire base collapse. Han, Chewie, and Finn are going inside the base to disable the shields. Poe is leading the aerial assault on the base, while Rey is finding her own way out of the base. The former group manages to do so thanks to holding Captain Phasma hostage, allowing the squadron to fly in and start their attack. Classic Star Wars action right there, those aerial dogfights never cease to amaze. Finn tries to think of an elaborate plan to rescue Rey, only for Han to point out that she's escaping it on her own. Han and Chewie plant several detonators in the required space, ready to explode upon the push of a button. Right before they can leave, however, Han has an encounter with Ren on a bridge, calling him by his birth name, Ben. Removing his mask, Ren insists that Ben Solo is gone, with Han insisting that Snoke is just using him for his power. Han tries to get his son to come back with him, which does seem to be working. At least until Han is impaled by Ren's lightsaber. I clearly remember watching the scene for the first time, it caught me so off guard. Though, given that Harrison Ford fought for Han to be killed off in episode 6, it does make sense in hindsight. Ren thanks his father one last time as Han falls down the bottomless shaft. An enraged Chewbacca responds to this by setting off the charges, beginning the destruction of Starkiller Base. Finn and Rey attempt to flee, but are stopped in their tracks by a furious Ren. It's also shown that he literally beats himself up, hitting himself on the side pretty hard to a point where blood drops down. Ren engages in a lightsaber duel with Finn, with both injuring each other with their weapons. Finn's knocked unconscious, so he attempts to grab the Skywalker lightsaber with the Force, only for Rey to grab it instead, resuming the duel. Compared to the flashy fights of the prequels and the samurai-style battles of the originals, here they're just kind of swinging the sabers around like they don't know what they're doing. I actually think this is brilliant, as neither of them have proper lightsaber experience, so this makes sense in context. I'm pretty sure this fight wasn't rehearsed either, which helps add to it. And I know Kylo Ren trained under Luke Skywalker, I don't care. I just wanted to say that. Rey manages to defeat Ren right as Starkiller Base starts to crumble. Snoke orders Hux to come to him with Ren, while Rey carries an unconscious Finn on board the Falcon, piloted by Chewie escaping the destroyed base. The Resistance celebrates their victory against the First Order, and R2-D2 suddenly powers on again. As it turns out, R2-D2 had the rest of the galaxy's map, allowing them to finally find a way to Luke. Rey sets out on this path in the Falcon, alongside Chewbacca and R2-D2, arriving on the plain of Ahch-To. Rey walks up the steps of a remote island, finding a hooded figure staring out into the sea. The figure reveals himself to be Luke Skywalker, living in exile. Rey presents his lightsaber to the Jedi, and the movie comes to a close. I'll never forget witnessing this moment in theaters. Overall, Episode 7 was a great time. Seeing Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, and Carrie Fisher back in action was a delight. The characters and performances of newcomers John Boyega, Daisy Ridley, Oscar Isaac, and Adam Driver were excellent as well. Once again, the action, special effects, and musical score continued to shine. Yes, this movie can be considered a sort of remake of Episode 4, and I wish it had more originality, but man, I enjoyed this movie so much, it's no big deal. The following two movies have changed the perception of this one, but I'll be following my own opinions on those. I'm anxious to see how well they hold up, but for what it is, The Force Awakens is a great start to the sequel trilogy. Ooh boy, it's the most polarizing Star Wars movie. Hell, one of the most polarizing movies of the 2010s in general. Whenever I see people discuss this movie online, they either really love the movie or really hate the movie. I haven't seen this one since it came out in theaters, having watched it for my 16th birthday on the 20th, 5 days after release with my friends and family. And I remember really liking it back then. I'm curious to see if my opinions have changed after half a decade, so let's get going. The opening crawl sends us a reminder of what went down last time, that this movie takes place immediately after the last. The First Order has destroyed the New Republic, with only the Resistance standing in their way. Right off the bat, we jump straight into the action as the Resistance is in the midst of an evacuation just as the First Order arrives with a massive super ship known as a Dreadnought. Poe Dameron takes on the fleet and toys around with General Hux, pulling the classic, taking him on the whole trip, only fighting back when he insults his mother.
I believe he's tooling with you. About his mother.
Open fire!
Something about that is so funny to me. Poe continues to attack the Dreadnought despite General Leia ordering him to come back. He does manage to destroy all the cannons, paving the way for a fleet of bomber ships to take their turn. Unfortunately, many of the bombs show off prematurely, thanks to a TIE fighter's wing crashing into one of them, setting off a chain reaction that leaves only one left. The last pilot sacrifices herself to deploy the explosives, taking down the Dreadnought, destroying another victory for the Resistance, and pissing off Supreme Leader Snoke yet again. Finn finally awakes from his coma, asking one question. Where's Rey? This question is answered as we cut to where the last movie ended, Rey finding Luke Skywalker in exile, offering him his old lightsaber. And after 2 years of waiting, what is the response? He just casually tosses it behind him. Yes, really. He really wants the rest, it seems. Rey isn't having any of that, having Chewbacca break down the door to Luke's shack. Meanwhile, Kylo Ren meets face to face with Snoke, which proves that he is in a supersized whatever the fuck he is. Snoke demands Ren take his helmet off, proceeding to scold him for his failures and taunting him on how he will never live up to Darth Vader. A furious Ren destroys his helmet on the elevator ride down, preparing to hunt down Rey himself. Back to Rey's plotline, we're shown that Luke is very hesitant to leave the planet and revive the Jedi Order, but the stubborn girl follows him literally everywhere, watching him cross a bridge on a stick, carry a dead fish thing, and yes, harvest blue milk from some alien creature. I have a question for those who left that last part in. Why? Rey begins to hear more voices leading her to the original Jedi texts. This begins to pique Luke's interest, asking who she is. However, the old man remains hesitant, declaring that he will never train another Jedi ever again, and that it's time for the Jedi to end. Leia rewards Poe for his bravery with a slap and a demotion. Just as the Resistance is divided in the plan to search for a new base, Snoke's personal ship appears, having tracked them through light speed. A squadron personally led by Ren launched an assault on the main ship, leading to the destruction of the main hangar. Leia attempts to use the Force to stop Ren from delivering the final blow, which does work. Only for 2 TIE fighters to deliver the final blow anyway, killing all in the main hangar, including Admiral Akbar, RIP, and Leia herself. Apparently. Turns out the Force is ridiculously overpowered and Leia somehow survived, pulling herself towards the surviving parts of the ship. Yeah, I don't know either. I remember finding this rather awkward due to Carrie Fisher's unfortunate passing the year before, and to this day, I still don't know how to feel. This left Leia unconscious, which places new character Vice Admiral Emmeline Holdo in charge. Holdo doesn't see eye to eye with Poe, seeing his recklessness as a liability. Finn meets another new character named Rose Tico, who envies Finn for his heroic actions, no matter how much he tries to downplay it. It also turns out that Rose's sister, Paige, was the last bomber on the Dreadnought run. The two devise a plan to sneak on board Snoke's ship and disable the hyperspace tracker, which Leia would certainly disapprove of. Maz Kanata can't do it because she's in the middle of something totally harmless, but informs them of a master code breaker on the planet Canto Blight. Who's ready for filler? Over on Acto, as Chewbacca is eating his food and disturbing the local population of birds known as ports, which apparently were the result of puffins interfering with filming, Luke explores the Falcon and reunites with R2-D2, who plays the old video message of Leia asking Obi-Wan Kenobi for help. This finally convinces Luke to— wait, hold on, why does he still have that in him? This finally convinces Luke to train Rey, promising her 3 lessons in the morning. Upon waking that morning, Rey is contacted by Ren using the Force, using a method that allows them to see, talk, and feel each other, even when in completely separate locations. Believe me, this is only the beginning of the two's interesting connection. Turns out she's the only one who can see Ren, as Luke questions what was up with the blaster hole in her shelter. Rey begins her training under Luke, showing that she clearly doesn't quite understand what the Force is, and he is quite the prankster.
I feel something. Yes, I feel next to it. Really?
Wow, it's really strong.
I've never felt any—
I know Luke's characterization in this movie is divisive, although personally I don't mind it. The guy's been through a lot, I get why he doesn't want to put up with this anymore. There, I complain in the movie, sue me. Rey senses a dark place with the Force, which begins breaking the ground in greatly concerning ways. He shares that he's only seen this raw strength one time, in Ben Solo. It didn't scare him then, but it does now. Rey and Ren have another Force connection as Chewbacca deals with a poured infestation on the Falcon, the latter showing no remorse for his sadistic actions. And by the latter, I mean Ren, I just want to clarify that. Finn, Rose, and BB-8 land on Canto Blight, beginning the infamous casino sequence. I've only ever been to one casino in my lifetime, and using that knowledge I will say that this is definitely a casino. Rose shares that she and her sister came from a mining system exploited by the First Order, and they happen to be the test subjects for weapons. Ouch. The two end up in custody, but find themselves in the same cell as a slicer named DJ, who helps them escape. A child almost pulls the alarm on them, but stops after Rose reveals she's with the Resistance. Finn and Rose take a ride on some very obviously CGI creatures, although their one way out is destroyed. Thankfully, they manage to escape. Wait, never mind, the guards trot off to them. Scratch that, BB-8 was piloting the ship, alongside DJ. That is some droid. Rey continues her Jedi training, slicing off a rod with a lightsaber. Luke calls the Jedi out on their failures and hypocrisy, as they allowed the rise of Darth Sidious in the Empire, subsequently leading to the birth of the most hated man in the galaxy, Darth Vader. He also shares that Leia had her son, Ben, train as Luke's apprentice. Ben apparently turned on Luke, trying to kill him and burning down the new Jedi Temple. Ben vanished with several other students, presumably forming the Knights of Ren afterwards. Leia pins the blame on Snoke, while Luke has no one to blame but himself, a Jedi Master. That night, Rey has another Force call with Ren, who just so happens to be shirtless. Naturally, the internet made it clear that they won't let this scene be forgotten. Ren tells his side of the story, claiming that Luke tried to kill him first, having grown fearful of his power. Rey then drops down the dark hole, filled with the weirdest mirror I've ever seen. She asks this oh-so-holy cave to see her parents, and what she gets is a reflection of herself. She shares his experience with Ren, who is backing the Force call, telling him it isn't too late to come back to the light side, as they engage in the forbidden act of hand-touching. Luke walks in on the two, now able to see what Rey is seeing. Luke demands her to leave the island, while Rey demands an answer to the truth of that story. Following a short duel, Luke reveals that Ren was correct. He did try to kill Ben Solo, albeit hesitantly, having believed that Snoke had already corrupted him. Rey, stubborn as she is, continues to believe that Ren can still be redeemed, setting off to leave the island. Luke heads off to burn down the last remains of the Jedi, only to be greeted by the spirit of Yoda, who summons a fucking lightning bolt to that instead. As in the original trilogy, Yoda is portrayed by a puppet, as he continues to be as unhinged as ever. I love it. Seeing him pop up was a pleasant surprise. Yes, I'm contemplating this movie again. Is there a problem? On the ship, Poe confronts Holdo for cowardness, as she was fueling the transport shuttles to abandon the ship. Poe pulls a mutiny on the ship, ordering the troops to stun Holdo if she moves. He communicates with BB-8, who has disguised itself with Finn, Rose, and DJ as First Order officers. DJ unlocks the door, but it turns out it's all an ambush, masterminded by the true villain of the sequel trilogy, BB-9. As the Resistance bridge is broken into, we learn that Leia has awoken, and what's the first thing she does? Fire a stun blaster at Poe. The entire crew manages to escape, with the exception of Holdo, who has voluntarily stayed behind. The crew notices the planet Freight, home to an abandoned rebel base, and decides to fly there to contact any allies in the Outer Rim. In the First Order ship, it's revealed that DJ sold out the heroes for his own personal gain. So all that side questing for nothing, huh? Captain Phasma declares that execution by blaster is too good for the heroes, summoning troopers with electric axes.
Rey willingly ejects herself from the Falcon in some sort of coffin-shaped pod, getting personally greeted by Ren. 2 stormtroopers are also present, placing handcuffs on the girl. On the elevator ride up, Rey tries to convince Ren to give up the dark side, but Ren reveals they foresaw Rey turning to him in addition to claiming that he saw who Rey's parents are. Before they can have a further conversation, the two arrive at the throne of Snoke himself. And I gotta say, I really love the aesthetic of this room. Snoke reveals that he created the connection between Rey and Ren as part of a plan to find Luke. Rey refuses to reveal Luke's connection to Snoke, so the Supreme Leader painfully probes it out of her mind instead. Dear God, this thing is fucking terrifying. Rey attempts to kill Snoke with Ren's lightsaber, but fails due to this man's sheer power. Snoke orders Ren to fulfill his destiny by killing Rey, but somehow failing to notice this despite boasting about his knowledge, ignites the Skywalker lightsaber on the side of Snoke, killing the Supreme Leader instead. The 2 lightsaber wielders team up to dispose of the remaining guards, which is one of the best sequences in the saga in my opinion, and my favorite scene in this movie.
Third compliment, baby, what are you gonna do? Despite everything, Ren chooses to fully embrace the dark side, and we learn the truth of Rey's parents. They were junk traders who stole off Rey for money, and they're now deceased. So if that's the case, where did all this power come from? I sure do hope the next movie elaborates further on it in a way that makes sense. I mean, at least she didn't get the power of midi-chlorians. The 2 fight for the Skywalker lightsaber, with both having a strong grip on it with the Force, ultimately destroying it. During all this, we finally learn what Holdo is going to do after staying behind. Pilot the ship into lightspeed right at Snoke's ship, sacrificing herself. Holy hell, this mad woman. This interrupts Finn and Rose's execution, allowing the 2 to fight back, including a short duel with Phasma herself, as Finn damages her helmet. Phasma declares that she always viewed Finn as scum, and he accepts. He is rebel scum. The floor underneath Phasma breaks open, as the First Order captain falls to her death. BB-8 also piloted a walker, which was amusing. What can't this droid do? Hux arrives in Snoke's chamber as Ren frames Rey for his murder, and ordering to attack the base on Freight. Hux is initially angry, but is forced into submission by the new Supreme Leader, Kylo Ren. Down on Freight itself, which I gotta say is a beautiful looking planet, the effects on this are gorgeous. The Resistance begins their defense against the First Order's AT-AT walkers, ready to blow them to smithereens, while remaining hopeful that someone will receive a distress signal. Poe leads a group up. These are in the best condition, but it's your only option. Ships directly to the massive walkers, but are forced to break off thanks to the many TIE fighters. Thankfully, Chewbacca and Rey and the Porg show up with the Falcon to aid the cause. All TIE fighters divert their attention to the Falcon under Ren's order, allowing the grounded ships to make their attack. Things aren't working out in their favor, however, as their squadrons drops like flies. Finn attempts to sacrifice himself to stop the laser, but is saved by Rose, having believed that wouldn't be worth it. This scene did spark some hot debate online, although personally I'm not sure if that laser would have stopped with that chip alone. Rose briefly kisses Finn in a brief romance in which they decide things would be better platonically off camera before passing out, and the doorway to the base is destroyed. The Resistance's distress signal was received by multiple posts, but no response. It seems that all hope is lost for our heroes. However, just as they're about to truly embrace defeat, Luke Skywalker finally shows up, ready to face Ren. Leia has finally given up on bringing Ben Solo back, to which Luke replies that no one's ever really gone. He hands Leia the golden dice that are on the Falcon, saying one last goodbye as he heads out to face the First Order. Ren orders all firepower to go toward the Jedi, which doesn't even leave a scratch on him. Despite Hux's urgings, Ren steps foot on the ground to personally face Luke. Poe sees this confrontation as Luke stalling to allow the Resistance to escape, following the crystallized foxes to their new exit. Or at least, what was left of it, as the entire thing's blocked by boulders. Good thing Rey shows up just in time to move them all out of the way after like one day of training.
And when I kill you, I will have killed the last Jedi!
Amazing. Every word of what you just said was wrong.
Ren moves to strike Luke, but is unable to attack him. Luke declares that the war is just beginning and that he will not be the last Jedi. And should Ren strike him down, he will be with him forever. And angry Ren attempts to kill Luke right then and there, only to have his lightsaber pass through him. As it turns out, that was actually a mental projection of Luke, having used his last remaining strength to accomplish that. With his job done and staring out in the sunset, as he did on Tatooine back in New Hope, Luke Skywalker dies peacefully, becoming one with the Force. Honestly, this is a fitting end to his character. Rey and Poe are finally introduced to each other, which I forgot didn't happen in the last movie. Rey also stole the Jedi tech switch from Ahch-To, meaning they weren't destroyed, and she had a talk with Leia, both of whom felt Luke's death. But the latter feels that the Resistance is ready to rise again. A young boy on Canto Blight, the same one who almost pulled the alarm, is revealed to be Force sensitive as he looks out into the sky, still wearing the Resistance ring he was given by Rose. The end credits also include a tribute to our beloved princess, Carrie Fisher, who sadly passed away a year before this movie was released, but managed to finish filming her scenes. May she rest in peace. Overall, Episode 8 was an amazing movie. Okay, yeah, I know that'll rile up some of you, but honestly, everything was really top-notch. The acting, the musical score, the special effects, the writing, the emotional weight, the fact that this movie really makes you think. I just really adore it. And hey, if you don't like this, I'm not going to hold it against you. Everyone deserves to hold their own opinion, that includes myself. I will agree with the criticism that the Justino subplot was practically useless, as nothing really came out of that. Still, this was an excellent and beautiful movie, and I honestly liked that it didn't feel like a Star Wars movie. I'm glad I still enjoyed this one, and now I'm interested in checking out Rian Johnson's other projects. This is it, the final installment in the Skywalker Saga, set to end the long-standing conflict between the Jedi and the Sith. Like the previous one, I also haven't watched this since it came out in theaters. I recall enjoying it despite the large amount of faults it had. This one does have one of the lowest ratings of any live-action Star Wars film on Rotten Tomatoes, and online, people seem to agree that this wasn't very good. As you may have guessed from my wording for the last two, the release date for this movie happened to land on my 18th birthday, December 20th, so I finally got to see it on opening day with friends and family as usual. And yes, as I turned 18, this was the first big thing I did as an adult. Was it worth it? Let's find out. The opening crawl drops a bombshell on us by declaring that the dead speak. As if that wasn't apparent enough. A threat of revenge from the resurrected Emperor Palpatine is broadcasted across the galaxy, letting the world know that he's still alive.
At last the work of generations is complete. The great error is corrected. The day of victory is at hand. The day of revenge. The day of the Sith.
Wait, what the fuck? Pretty sure that man fell down a giant shaft back in episode 6. How the hell did he survive something like that? Turns out this would be elaborated upon in the film's official novelization, revealing that Palpatine possessed a clone while falling down the shaft. Which would have been nice to know in the film itself, you know. Yes, I really went to a local bookstore to take this photo. Said broadcast was also first heard during a Fortnite event, but that's a rambling for another day. Back to the story itself, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren is shown rampaging on good old Mustafar in search of a Sith Wayfinder, which would lead away to the Emperor. Ren is determined to end any threat to his power, and arrives on the stormy planet of Exegol. I really like the aesthetics and design of this place. It looks like something straight out of a horror movie. Palpatine reveals that he created Snoke, and was secretly pulling the strings behind the First Order and manipulating Ben Solo to turn evil. Ren then comes face to face with the undead Emperor, who is revealed with an admittedly clever repurposing of a classic line.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
Darth Sidious here isn't looking so hot, with his eyes being fully white, his skin somehow being even worse, and his bones sticking out on his hands. Again, it looks like something straight out of a horror movie. I love how creepy it is. But you know, even with those compliments, I can't help but think about how stupid this is. As much as I love the guy, bringing back Palpatine with zero buildup was a dumb move. Killing himself does sound like something to do, and it's a great idea and concept, but one that was poorly executed. And the whole reveal about Snoke raises more questions than answers. Sure, he was an artificial creation, but was he based on Sidious himself, or someone else entirely? It would be like if, say, a future Danganronpa game suddenly revealed that Junko Enoshima had cloned herself to manipulate everything beyond the grave. And take it a step further by also revealing that Samuji Shirogane was artificially created by Junko Damon. You know, I can see why they stopped making those games. Sidious offers Ren command over the First Order, a fleet of Star Destroyers, each equipped with a Death Star-like laser, on the condition that he kills Rey, becoming what his grandfather, Darth Vader, could not by ending the Jedi. Sidious warns that the girl is not who he thinks she is, and when Ren asks for elaboration, Sidious smiles as the camera cuts to black, with the sound of cackling thunder accompanying. Elsewhere, the Falcon is flying through hyperspace with Chewbacca playing a game against Poe Dameron and Finn, who accuse the Wookiee of cheating. A creature named Boolio shows up to deliver a message from a spy hiding among the First Order, right before a whole group of TIE fighters pops up. Seeing this as their cue to escape, the crew decides to do just that, using a new technique called light speed skipping. There's also a slug named Claude on board, which spawned the live slug reaction meme. Rey is shown training to be a Jedi at the new Resistance base on Agen Kloss, attempting to reach out to the voices of past Jedi under the guidance of Leia. Due to Carrie Fisher's passing, she appears in this movie through unused footage from Episode 7. Although Rey considers this impossible, Leia claims that nothing is impossible, handing her the Skywalker lightsaber, having somehow been repaired between the last movie and this one. I guess that validates Leia's statement? Rey has a vision of multiple events, including one where she becomes evil and sits atop a throne, also shared by Kylo Ren when he touched by Vader's helmet. Poe arrives to break the news that somehow Palpatine returned, and that the Final Order shall begin in 16 hours. The Resistance reacts to this with reception, and Rey wishes to find Exegol to destroy the Emperor. Poe, Finn, Chewie, C-3PO, and BB-8 accompany Rey on her journey, despite her protest to go alone. And it says goodbye to Leia, who tells her to never be afraid of who she is. Ren is shown alongside the Knights of Ren, who finally decide to show up, forging a new helmet, and shares his plans with top officers, while presenting the head of Boolio and declaring there's a spy within the First Order. Ren force-chokes an officer who doubts his plan to death, and sets out to find the other Sith Wayfinder to prevent Rey from getting her hands on him. Real quick, I also want to compliment Maz Kanata here. Apparently she was portrayed with an actual animatronic as opposed to CGI or motion capture, and if so, that is very impressive. The heroes arrive on the planet Kasana, which is in the middle of a festival held once every 42 years, a reference to the fact that Episode 4 and Episode 9 came out 42 years apart. Rey is asked by one of John Port's children what her family name is, to which she responds, "Just Rey." Rey has another force call with Ren, informing her that Sidious wants her dead and is somehow driving her necklace from that location. The group is caught by a stormtrooper, but they are saved by none other than Lando Calrissian. Lando shares that he accompanied Luke on a journey to find a Sith Wayfinder by tracking a man named Ochi, but to no luck. He has since retired from flying, and asks a parting Rey to give Leia his love, to which Rey asks him to do it himself. The gang departs on speeders and engages in a wild goose chase with stormtroopers, apparently learning for the first time that rocket troopers exist.
Oh, they fly now! They fly now? They fly now!
Spears are shot down, resulting in the group sinking in a pile of some sort of twitch sand. Finn also has something to tell Rey. I sure do hope we find out what that is. Thankfully, the twitch sand isn't life-threatening, as they end up in a cave. A speeder is found by C-3PO containing a hex charm, an emblem of Sith loyalists. The remains of Ochi are found in the cave, and with it, a dagger.
Horrible things have happened.
As if that lightsaber you're holding didn't slaughter children. Although C-3PO can translate the engravings on the dagger, his programming prohibits him from speaking Sith language. They also have an encounter with a giant serpent, which Rey senses hurt, so she uses force healing to heal the wound. Force healing is nothing new to this movie. It was shown in an episode of The Mandalorian that aired weeks before this came out, and even before it was depicted in a couple of video games. The serpent thanks Rey by showing them the exit, but she does sense Ren's presence. She heads out in the sand to face him as the rest of the gang investigate Ochi's abandoned ship. By Finn's request, Chewie goes out to get Rey, unaware that the Knights of Ren are right next to him. The First Order places the Wookiee under captivity, while Ren is intent on hitting Rey with his speeder at full speed. Right as that's about to happen, Rey backflips and cuts off a wing with the lightsaber, causing Ren to crash. Finn alerts her that Chewie has been captured, and she uses the Force to pull the ship down to her. Ren also tries to do the same thing, but Rey accidentally destroys the ship with Force lightning. How the hell did she manage to pull off that ship by accident? Believing Chewie is dead, a distraught Rey leaves with the gang on Ochi's ship, with the First Order capturing the Falcon. General Hux reveals to General Pryde that Chewbacca is still alive, meaning Rey didn't kill him. C-3PO reveals that he still has the dagger's inscriptions burned into his memory, so Poe offers to fly to the planet Kijimi to have the protocol droid worked on in the black market, which would make him able to translate it. BB-8 awakens a new droid by the name of Dio, and oh boy, my friends went crazy at its name reveal. However, Poe happens to be recognized by someone named Zori Bliss, who reveals that Poe used to be a spice runner and he still owes her money. This reveal caused some backlash as it was perceived as racist towards Latinos, as Oscar Isaac is of Latino descent himself. But this is a discussion for another time. The group travels through the market, or one of the locals is played by series composer John Williams, very cool cameo right there, but they discover that in order to have C-3PO speak the Sith language, he must have his memory erased. After consenting to this, C-3PO reawakens with red eyes and shares that the Sith Wayfinder is located on the ruins of the second Death Star, before rebooting back to his normal self, barring his memory. Prior to this, Rey realizes that her parents were on board Ochi's ship as they left her. She also senses Ren's Star Destroyer and the fact that Chewbacca is still alive, much to her relief. And everyone else's. Using a First Order medal given to them by Zori, the gang sneaks aboard the massive ship, managing to find Chewbacca's location thanks to Jedi mind-tricking 2 stormtroopers. Rey temporarily parts with them to retrieve the dagger and ends up in what appears to be Ren's trophy room. She hears the sound of her younger self screaming upon taking the dagger, but Ren shows up through Force Hall, revealing that her parents weren't just your typical nobodies. The two engage in a lightsaber duel while Ren shares that Sidious wanted to find Rey, and, when they couldn't get her, ordered her parents dead, having been killed with the dagger by Ochi. The rest are ambushed by a group of stormtroopers, and are ordered to be terminated by Pride. Turns out that Hutch was a spy among the First Order. Out of spite against Ren. Hutch asks Finn to shoot him in the arm to make it look convincing, which Finn chooses not to. He shoots his blade instead. This doesn't fool Pride, who executes Hutch on the spot. Ren reveals why Sidious wanted Rey. She is the Dark Lord's granddaughter, part of the Palpatine family. As her father was his son, and Ren's mother was Vader's daughter, this makes the two a dyad in the Force. Whatever that means. Somehow I've never heard the word dyad before this movie, so I had to look up what that meant. And regarding the reveal itself, yeah, that was dumb. This part was actually the most vocal the audience got when I watched this in theaters, and even then was just a few whispers of, what the hell? Which was also elaborated upon in the novel, as Palpatine's son was a failed clone of the man himself. Again, it's a cool concept, but it's suffering from poor execution. The heroes land on the ocean moon of Kef Bur, part of the Endor system. Down here is another group of people riding on actual horses, led by another former stormtrooper named Jana. I think that's how you pronounce it. Rey steals a watercraft known as a skimmer and sets sail to what's left of Death Star 2. Desperate to find the Wayfinder. Finn follows Rey on another skimmer because there happens to be one. She finds the Emperor's old throne room in perfect condition because fuck logic, I guess. Not that Star Wars was exactly logical to begin with. And successfully locates the Wayfinder, but sees a version of herself as a Sith, complete with a double-way lightsaber. After she briefly faces herself, Ren shows up and destroys the Wayfinder she spent so long looking for, declaring that she can only go to Exegol if she accompanies him. This angers Rey, and so begins the final saber duel. Leia realizes what must be done, and, as saving herself in space in the last movie used up a significant amount of her life, chooses to use the last of her strength to reach out to her son, one last time. On the duel itself, it's a Star Wars duel alright. One thing I appreciate is Rey fighting aggressively while Ren fights defensively, the opposite of the typical fighting styles of the Jedi and Sith, respectively. As Leia calls out to Ren with the Force, Rey fatally stabs him with his own lightsaber, before both sense her death. With that, all 3 of the original trilogy's heroes have died. Rey heals Ren's wound with the Force, telling him that she wanted to take Ben's hand, while the Resistance mourns the loss of their general. It's Chewie's reaction that makes the scene hurt, knowing that he outlived all his friends. I really do feel bad for him. Rey flees using Ren's ship, while Ren encounters a memory of his father, Han Solo. Han tells him that Kylo Ren is dead, and Ben Solo is alive. After a heart-to-heart with his memory, Ren throws his lightsaber into the water, rejecting the dark side and reviving Ben Solo. Darth Sidious informs Pride via hologram that the Final Order has begun, ordering one of the new Star Destroyers to destroy a world they know, which happens to be Kijimi. Unlike the quick cartoony explosion of Alderaan, Kijimi's destruction lasts much longer, with the plates even flying off, and people were worried that Disney would make this more lighthearted. The message is transmitted on every frequency, declaring that the Sith flame shall burn, beginning the Final Order. Poe is unsure what to do, but is cheered up by Lando, who showed up here, by the way. He tells Poe that he felt the same while taking down the Empire, but the rebels had each other. On Acto, Rey burns down Ren's ship, intending to exile herself the same way Luke Skywalker did. She chucks the lightsaber in the fire, only for Luke's spirit to catch it, saying that Jedi's weapon deserves more respect. Guess he had time to think after touching it last time. Luke reveals that he and Leia both knew of Rey's true lineage, and gives Leia his lightsaber to Rey. Turns out Luke trained Leia to be a Jedi, but sensed the death of her son at the end of her journey. She surrendered her saber to Luke, telling him that it will be picked up again. Sharing that 1,000 generations of Jedi live inside Rey, because that makes sense. Rey recovers the other Sith Wayfinder from the ruins of Ren's ship, while Luke finally lifts that old X-Wing out from that water. Is it fan service? Yeah. Was it cool? Yeah. R2-D2 receives coordinates of Luke's X-Wing, revealing the path for the Resistance to head to Exegol. Lando and Chewie use the Falcon to seek out any help they can get, and Poe is determined to end the First Order's reign for good. Also, Dio knows a lot about Exegol. I thought that was funny. The Final Order prepares to deploy as Rey arrives on Exegol to face her grandfather, while the rest of the heroes arrive on the planet to take down the navigation tower to prevent their deployment. If there's one thing I love about this movie, it's Exegol's design. I just adore how sinister it is. If that says anything about me as a person? Welp. Rey finds herself at the Sith throne, just like the one in her vision. She is welcomed by Darth Sidious himself, having waited for his granddaughter to come home. Rey insists that she is here to end the Sith, not lead them. But Sidious reveals that if she kills him in anger, his spirit will possess her, as all the Sith live in him. Because that also makes sense. Looks like he accomplished what Rey was trying to do with all the Jedi. Sidious reveals the state of the resistance battle to Rey, which isn't going in their favor, all while pressuring her into striking him down. Ben Solo arrives on a stolen TIE fighter as Sidious announces the beginning of the ritual to his loyal cultists. I'm still convinced that Ian McDiarmid was born to play this character.
The Sith are reborn. The Jedi are dead. Do it.
Rey senses Ben through the Force and uses their bond to give him the Skywalker lightsaber, which he uses to deal with the Knights of Ren. Rey uses Leia's lightsaber to deal with the Silverane guards, and once they're disposed of, the two stand against the undead Sith Lord. Sidious, however, realizes that the two are a Force dyad, and drains the life out of them to restore the one true Emperor.
Look what you have made.
Darth Sidious is reborn, and sends Ben, the last of the Skywalker bloodline, falling down a hole to die, as he once fell all those years ago. Up in the skies, Finn and Janna manage to destroy the tower, but Lando is yet to arrive with any backup. Despite Rose's urging, Finn decides to take down the entire ship. All hopes begins to seem lost for the Resistance as their fire they're dropping like flies. However, Lando shows up at the last minute with a massive fleet of citizens, including Sidorian, Wedge, and Antilles, having had enough of old Palpatine in the First Order. Honestly, I like this scene. Seeing ordinary people go out and risk their lives just to stop the root of evil is really fucking awesome. However, things soon take a turn for the worse, as Sidious, determined to let nothing stop the return of the Sith, uses his reborn strength to send the most powerful blast of Force lightning ever to destroy the heroes. There are over 16,000 ships up there, all taken out by one man. This guy is no fucking joke. During this, Rey finally manages to reach out and connect with the Jedi of the past, including Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker, Mace Windu, and of course, Yoda, giving her the strength to stand up and face the Emperor. Sidious stops his attack to personally deal with the girl himself, and so begins the final battle of the Skywalker Saga.
A scavenger girl is no match for the power in me. I am all the Sith.
And I'm all the Jedi.
Was this a coincidence, or did they copy that scene from Avengers Endgame? As dumb as this exchange is, there's been far cornier in Star Wars. So, what happens next? And with that, Sheev Palpatine, also known as Darth Sidious, former Senator of Naboo, the last Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, the Phantom Menace, and the final Dark Lord of the Sith, was finally and permanently destroyed, both in body and in spirit, once and for all, alongside the Sith Eternal cult, allowing the Resistance to end the Final Order. Due to the sheer amount of power this required, Rey ends up dying in the process, but Ben climbs back out of the pit and revives her with the last of his strength. The two share a kiss that feels very forced as Ben Solo passes away, ending the Skywalker bloodline as his and Leia's bodies fade away, becoming one with the Force. The Resistance celebrates their victory over the First Order, with people rising up all over the galaxy, finally free from oppression. Subsequent scenes show two female Resistance members kissing, which was censored in multiple countries. Chewbacca finally getting a Medal of Honor from Maz Kanata, and Lando offers to help Janna find out where she's from. Turns out she's his daughter, as revealed in his visual dictionary. Rey arrives at Tatooine and visits the old Lars homestand, burying the Skywalker lightsabers in the sand, as she has constructed her own with a yellow blade. An old woman passes by and asks who she is, and with the spirits of Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa looking, responds with Rey Skywalker, as she walks towards the binary sunset with BB-8, officially bringing the sequel trilogy, and the Skywalker Saga as a whole, to a conclusion. Oh yeah, the thing Finn wanted to say was that he was Force sensitive, go figure. Overall, Episode 9 was a rough ride. There's a lot of great ideas in this one, but unfortunately they're executed quite poorly. A good chunk of the writing is sloppy, and lack of explanation on certain aspects was particularly frustrating, with the answers lying in the film's novelization. That said, I don't hate this movie, as once again the action, musical score, and special effects are top-notch as always, and I really like the aesthetics of Exegol and the zombie Palpatine. The Rise of Skywalker is not a bad movie, but it's also far from a great movie. It's a shame we went from 6 great movies in a row to just an okay one. About a month after The Rise of Skywalker release, a script from when Colin Trevorrow was attached as director, titled Duel of the Fates, was leaked online. There's many significant differences between the two versions, including... Even though some declare this to be superior to The Rise of Skywalker, I personally feel that Duel of the Fates would have been a controversial film regardless, due to certain aspects such as... The script has actually gotten some really cool fan-made adaptations, including a full comic adaptation by Andrew Weingartner, I apologize if I mispronounced that, and a comedic animation by the YouTube channel Mr. Sunday Movies. It's great to see what could have been this movie be the basis for all these projects by very talented people. In conclusion, the Skywalker Saga was a bumpy road from beginning to end. Yes, most of the films are great, but you can't ignore the rough spots throughout, especially with the first and last films both being okay. The prequels suffer from questionable writing and certain performances, most changes made to the original trilogy releases arguably made the films worse, and the sequels were hurt by what appeared to be a proper lack of planning. Even with this, I can't deny that I enjoyed this rewatch. Each film has that one scene that always sticks out to me, and as I mentioned before, some of these are among my favorite films of all time, especially The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Hell, the only one I straight up didn't enjoy was Attack of the Clones. Even with the issues that plagued The Phantom Menace and The Rise of Skywalker, I still like those ones, even if they are some of my least favorite in the saga. Whether or not you love or hate any of these, you can't deny that Star Wars is a staple of popular culture, having influenced so many other projects across all kinds of media. It's hard to imagine a world without the franchise. 3 new movies were announced at Star Wars Celebration 2023, so while the story of Skywalker may be closed for good, that doesn't mean there isn't room for a new chapter. Even in its roughest times, I'll always love Star Wars, and regardless of how these movies turn out, you can bet I'll be at the movie theater as they release.